Chapter 1581. Chu Yun Empire. A million miles away from the imperial city, there was a vast and desolate mountain range. At this moment, a faint golden light streaked across the sky like lightning, flying all the way to the south. The golden light enveloped an exquisite and luxurious dragon carriage, pulled by 8 Pegasus with snow-white wings. The huge dragon carriage was made of precious star, true gold, and inlaid with tens of thousands of pearls and precious gems. Although there were no guards of honor around the dragon carriage, it still had a noble and sacred aura. The dragon carriage was 100 feet wide and could accommodate more than 10 people. Among them, there was a dazzling hall with an exquisite and luxurious throne placed in it. Emperor Chu Yun, who was wearing a dark golden dragon robe, sat on the throne with a gloomy expression, frowning as he pondered. At this moment, the sage master, who was holding a book and a large brush, quickly walked to the throne and reported respectfully, "Sage Emperor, we're already 1,000,000 miles away from the imperial city. I've checked just now, and there's no abnormality in the surrounding 100 miles. No one is following us." Emperor Chu Yun's thoughts were interrupted. He nodded expressionlessly and said, "We can't let down our guard. Continue to monitor the surroundings. We'll leave the imperial city secretly and must hide our tracks. We can't be discovered." "I understand." The sage master nodded. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Sage Emperor, although the experts from various countries have gathered in the imperial city, including 2 martial saints, they all want to snatch the sword of burial of heaven. However, if we give up the imperial city so easily, it will definitely fall and even cause the entire empire to fall apart. Do you really not regret it?" Emperor Chu Yun glanced at him and shook his head with a cold smile. "I never regret my actions. Soon, you'll understand that a mere empire is not worth mentioning compared to the secret of the sword of burial of heaven." The sage master nodded slightly and didn't reply. Emperor Chu Yun continued, "Also, you have to understand that I didn't give up the imperial city because I'm afraid of death. The 2 martial sages and the hundreds of tribulation-passing experts are not enough to threaten my life. I just don't want to stay in the imperial city and be harassed by those clowns. They would never give up until they obtained the sword of the burial of heaven. I'm heading south to find an absolutely secluded place to study the mysteries of the burial of heaven's sword. After I decipher the secrets of the sword of burial of heaven, I still have to search for the legendary Kenshin tomb. Once I obtain Kenshin's treasures and Kenshin's inheritance, it will only be a matter of time before I break through to the martial god realm." At this point, Great Emperor Chu Yun was in high spirits. Murderous intent surged in his eyes, and his entire body exuded a domineering aura. "Once this emperor becomes the 4th martial god, I'll definitely annihilate those 5 great empires with my own hands and slaughter them until the sun and moon lose their light to take revenge for what happened today." The sage sovereign was also affected by his aura, and his eyes were filled with strong anticipation. He nodded and said, "I believe that the sage sovereign will definitely achieve his wish and become the new divine master." At the same time, Ji Tianxing and Ji Bai quietly left the city. Once they were far away from the imperial city, Ji Tianxing summoned Black Dragon. Black Dragon carried the 2 of them and flew across the sky at lightning speed, rushing back to Mount God Seal. Ji Tianxing sat on Black Dragon's back and meditated with his eyes closed, silently cultivating. Ji Bai was like a sharp sword, standing straight behind him, guarding him like a shadow. Although this was the first time Ji Bai had seen Shenron, he was quite shocked and excited. However, he was calm and wise, and did not show any abnormal emotions. In his mind, his mysterious and powerful master had unlimited potential and possibilities. It was normal for him to create miracles. Only a noble Shenron was worthy of being his master's mount. Unknowingly, 20 days passed. Black Dragon hurried day and night, while Ji Tianxing meditated and cultivated, consolidating his martial arts realm. The journey was very peaceful, even a little dull and boring. Sure enough, the experts of the various countries ignored Ji Tianxing. No one followed or pursued him. Apart from a few ignorant demonic beasts that launched a few attacks on the black dragon was still alive. But those were trivial matters, not worth mentioning. There was no need for Ji Tianxing to act. Ji Bai easily took care of them with a draw of his sword. One evening, as the sun set, Black Dragon finally returned to the foot of Mount God Seal. Ji Tianxing ended his meditation, opened his eyes, and stood up. He stood on Black Dragon's back, looking down at the valley and the earth below, and ordered Ji Bai, stay at the foot of Mount God Seal and wait for my orders. Ji Bai respectfully cupped his hands and nodded. As master commands, Ji Bai will take his leave. With that, he turned and left Black Dragon's back. His figure flashed a few times and disappeared into the sea of clouds. Ji Tianxing returned Black Dragon to the world inside the sword and leisurely returned to the peak of Mount God Seal. Mount God Seal was very quiet, and there were no signs of the geniuses of the various countries. He didn't need to guess to know that they were still training in the 3,000 worlds. Calculating the time, there were about 4 or 5 days left before the training ended. He quietly returned to Heaven's Saint Palace and entered a secret room to cultivate. This time, he left Mount God Seal, first went to God Tier Lake, and then returned to Chu Yun Empire, which delayed him for more than 50 days. Now that he finally returned to Heaven's Saint Palace, he could finally rest in peace for a few days. 4 days passed in a flash. On the morning of the 5th day, some young geniuses walked out of the Clear Sky Pagoda. These young geniuses had just finished their training in the secret realm. Most of them had injuries on their bodies, and there were still bloodstains on their robes. Some of them had more serious injuries, and their bodies were covered in blood. Their faces were pale, and their auras were very weak. There were even some whose injuries had reached a shocking degree. They had either broken an arm or lost a leg. Clearly, Great Guardian's words were not alarmist. Training in the secret realm was equivalent to actual combat, and it was very dangerous. Although many of the geniuses were injured, they were all very excited, and their faces had excited and gratified smiles. These people had all obtained benefits in the secret realm. Some broke through bottlenecks and increased their strength. Some obtained fortuitous opportunities and rare treasures or cultivation resources. Only a few people had gloomy expressions, and they looked dejected and pessimistic. These people either failed in their training or did not have enough fortuitous opportunities and did not gain anything. After all, there were many people who participated in the secret realm's training, and not everyone could gain anything. Everyone's strength, wisdom, and aptitude were different, and their luck and fortuitous opportunities were also different. A few hours later, it was noon. More than 50 young geniuses walked out of the Clear Sky Pagoda one after another. They did not return to their residences, and they all gathered in the square below the pagoda, looking at the huge stone tablet in the middle of the square. Great Guardian had said that after the training in the secret realm ended, everyone's results would be displayed on the stone tablet. Chapter 1582. An entire day passed. In the evening, everyone's training had ended. More than 90 young geniuses gathered under the stone tablet. Everyone whispered to each other as they waited patiently for the list to appear. The last few geniuses to walk out of the Clear Sky Pagoda were Jiang Mingxue, Song Zhanyu, and Qin Sanqiu. Back then, they had chosen the Purple Mystery Realm, which was of the highest difficulty. Apart from the 3 of them, there were 2 other geniuses in the top 10 who had also chosen the Purple Mystery Realm. However, the 2 of them ended up in a miserable state. When the 2 of them walked out of the Clear Sky Pagoda, they were covered in blood and wounds. One of them had both his arms broken, while the other had lost a leg. Without a doubt, the 2 of them did not obtain any opportunities or treasures. When everyone saw the miserable state of the 2 of them, they were worried about the results of Qin Sanqiu and the other 2. However, when the 3 of them walked out of the Clear Sky Pagoda one after another, many geniuses were shocked and found it unbelievable. Jiang Mingxue looked tired. Her white dress was a little messy and stained with dry blood. There were also a few wounds on her body. However, she exuded a cold, murderous aura. Her eyes were bright and sharp, and her strength and aura were much stronger. Obviously, She had gained a lot from this training, and her strength had improved. Song Jianyu's situation was very similar to Jiang Ningxue's. His clothes were tattered and stained with blood. However, he was in high spirits and his eyes were shining. His strength had improved as well. Qin Sanqiong's situation was the most unique. When he walked out of the clear sky pagoda, his clothes were intact, and he looked no different from when he entered the mystery realm. However, the geniuses from various countries knew that Qin Sanqiong was the #1 genius and would definitely be able to pass the purple mystery realm. He would definitely gain a lot. However, before the experiential ranking appeared, no one knew what his gains were. Finally, everyone gathered in the square. The black stone tablet that was 1,000 feet tall lit up with a dense white light, and more than 90 lines of large characters appeared on it. The list had finally appeared. More than 90 young geniuses were all in high spirits. They stared at the list and quickly read the lines of words. After a moment of silence, the crowd burst into exclamations and discussions. Wow, the list's information is so detailed. It even has a corresponding ranking. Jiang Ningxue ranked 3rd on the experience roll. Her strength has risen to the peak of the 6th Firmament Essence Soul Realm. In the 5 Absolute Cloud Summit, she had broken through 27 great formations and killed 320 illusory spirits. In this trial, she has obtained a low-grade Tribulation Level 5 Extinction Scripture and 12 Supreme-grade Nascent Divinity Secret Pills. The crowd immediately turned to look at Jiang Ningxue when they heard the exclamation. Jiang Ningxue was surrounded by the geniuses of the Thousand Snow Empire. She proudly stared at the stone tablet with a faint smile on her face. Many young geniuses revealed expressions of envy and jealousy as they sighed with emotion. Oh my God, she actually obtained a Tribulation Grade Secret Technique and 12 Supreme Grade Primordial Spirit Secret Pills. The Purple Word Mystery Realm is indeed extraordinary. It actually gave out such generous rewards. When we train in the Blue Word Secret Realm, very few of us are rewarded with secret arts. Even if we do get them, they're only superior grade or supreme grade primordial spirits. Everyone look, the one in 2nd place is Song Jianyu. His gains are even richer. When the crowd heard the exclamation of one of the geniuses, their gazes were focused on the 2nd row of words. Immediately, someone read aloud in an envious tone, Song Jianyu, ranked 2nd on the trial list. His strength has increased to the peak of the 6th level primordial spirit realm. In the Thunderfire Grand Canyon, he broke through 12 illusions and maze formations, explored 19 Thunderfire caves, and killed 82 Thunder Fire Spirit beasts. In this trial, he obtained a mid-grade Tribulation Level Thunder Fire Divine Fist and 18 Supreme-grade Nascent Divinity Secret Pills. Hearing this, countless geniuses were shocked, and their eyes were filled with envy. Oh my God, it's actually a mid-grade Tribulation Level Secret Technique. Thunder Fire Divine Fist. It's actually a secret technique that can control lightning. His combat strength will definitely soar. The Great Guardian did not lie to us. The rewards of the trial in the secret realm are simply too generous. It's a pity that the most generous rewards are hidden in the Purple Word Mystery Realm. Ordinary people like us are not qualified to obtain them at all. As the discussions broke out, everyone's gazes were focused on the 1st row of words at the highest point of the stone tablet. When the crowd saw the words clearly, they were extremely shocked. Many of them were dumbfounded and petrified. Qin Sanqiong ranked 1st on the trial list. His strength has broken through to the 7th level primordial spirit realm. In the primordial battlefield, he went through 36 impregnable passes, fought 48 bloody battles, and killed more than 200 primordial fighting souls. In this trial, he obtained a high-grade Tribulation-level secret technique, Heavenly Blade, 20 Supreme-grade Nascent Divinity Secret Pills, and a low-grade Tribulation-level fighting soul armor. The crowd was stunned for a long time before they gradually recovered from their shock. Countless people gasped and turned to look at the edge of the square, where Qin Sanqiong was sitting on the roof of the palace. Qin Sanqiong was leaning against the cornice of the roof. He carried the Heavenly Blade on his back, and held a flagon of wine in his hand. He looked calm as he drank. It was as if he only had eyes for the blade and wine. He completely ignored the gazes of the crowd. A commotion broke out in the crowd. Many geniuses sighed with mixed emotions. Qin Sangxiong is indeed the #1 genius. He actually made a breakthrough in the secret zone and reached the 7th level of the primordial soul realm. The Heavenly Blade, a high-grade tribulation-level secret technique, is definitely a priceless treasure. Not only did he obtain the Heavenly Blade, but he also obtained a low-grade tribulation-level fighting soul armor. Among all the people who participated in the trial, only he obtained a tribulation-level fighting soul armor. With the Heavenly Blade and the fighting soul armor, his combat strength is close to the peak of the primordial soul realm. I'm afraid he is invincible among his peers. There is only one more month to the God-Disciple assessment. It seems like there is no doubt about the result. Qin Sangxiong is definitely the #1 genius. Just as everyone was filled with amazement and lamentation, someone suddenly shouted in confusion. Why are there only 98 names on the trial list? Could it be that there are 2 people who did not enter the secret zone? Hearing this, many geniuses counted the names on the trial list and found that there were indeed 2 people missing. I know, it's Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing did not participate in the trial in the secret zone. Yes, not only Ji Tianxing, but Enbark as well. Are the 2 of them stupid? The rewards for the trial in the secret zone are so plentiful. Why did they not participate? Enbark is just an insignificant character. It doesn't matter if he participates in the trial or not. However, Ji Tianxing is the son of God. Why didn't he participate in the trial in the secret zone? Everyone had mixed feelings as they whispered to each other. Chapter 1583. Everyone knew that the trial in the Mystery Land was a great opportunity. Most people would gain a lot, and the talented geniuses would get secret skills and treasures. The trial results of Qin Sangxiong and Song Zhanyu were the best proof. If a peerless genius like Ji Tianxing, the son of God, had participated in the trial in the Mystery Land, he would have gained a lot as well. However, he did not participate in the trial. The young geniuses from various countries were talking about this. After Ji Tianxing became the son of God, he became more arrogant than before. That's right. This guy did not even participate in the trial in the Mystery Land. He is either too arrogant or too conceited. I think he is living in the Heaven Saint Palace and enjoying the best treatment. He has lost his fighting spirit and drive. So what if he is the son of God? Qin Sangxiong and Song Zhanyu's strength has increased greatly. They can easily defeat him. In a month's time, it is unknown whether Ji Tianxing can make it to the top 5 in the God-Disciple assessment. If the son of God can't even make it to the top 5, it will be ridiculous. All kinds of complicated discussions rose one after another in the crowd. Most of the geniuses were disdainful of Ji Tianxing's stupidity and arrogance. They were gloating over his misfortune. Everyone was waiting to see Ji Tianxing make a fool of himself in the God-Disciple assessment in a month's time. Jiang Ningxue stood in the crowd, surrounded by the geniuses of the Thousand Snow Empire. She was noble and dazzling. She looked indifferently in the direction of the Heaven Saint Palace as a cold sneer flashed in her eyes. She thought to herself, Ji Tianxing, you're truly conceited. To think that you wouldn't even participate in the trial of the secret realm. In a month's time, I will defeat you and trample you under my feet in the God-Disciple assessment. When that time comes, I will return the words you said to me back to you without changing a single word. It is not that I am not worthy of you, but that you are not worthy of me. Not far away, a group of young geniuses from the White Knight Empire surrounded Song Zhanyu, congratulating him and flattering him. Song Zhanyu was the leader of the dozen or so geniuses. Now that he had obtained such a huge harvest, his strength had improved greatly. It could be said that he was flushed with success. He also looked in the direction of Heaven Saint Palace, his eyes cold and indifferent as he calculated in his heart. This brat is truly vigilant. In order to protect the sword of burial of heaven, he actually holed himself up in the Heaven Saint Palace, even giving up on training in the mystic realms. He's already suspicious. I'm afraid it'll be even harder for me to find a chance to seize the sword of burial of heaven. While the geniuses of the various countries were discussing, the chief guardian led the 6 god emissaries to the square. Everyone immediately quieted down and bowed in unison. "Greetings, great guardian." The great guardian led the 6 divine envoys to the center of the square. His expression was solemn as he said in a dignified tone, "The trial in the arcane realm has come to an end, and the results of everyone's trial have been announced on the trial list. In this trial in the arcane realm, most of the disciples have obtained great gains and improved their strength. I'm deeply gratified by this. However, I would like to announce something now, and I hope that everyone will be mentally prepared." Hearing his words, the young genius's expressions turned solemn. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. Most of them guessed that the news that the chief guardian was going to announce must be related to the God-disciple examination. After all, they had been in Mount God for 5 months, and there was only 1 month left before the God-disciple examination. After a moment of silence, the chief guardian announced with a dignified expression, 2 days later, there will be a ranking battle in Mount God. It will be held in the square outside the temple. This ranking battle is very important, and it will affect everyone's future. Those who are ranked in the top 50 can continue to stay in Mount God to train and wait for the God-disciple examination. Those who are ranked below 50 will be sent to the Arctic Abyss to work in the Glacier Divine Mine. Everyone only has 2 days to rest, so please do your best to prepare for the battle. Hearing this news, many young geniuses were shocked and puzzled as they burst into a discussion. "Gosh, I thought it was about the God-disciple examination. I didn't expect it to be a ranking battle. What ranking battle? Why haven't I heard of it? It has never happened before. Those who are ranked below 50 will be sent to the Glacier Divine Mine to work? How can this be? Even those who are eliminated should be sent to the Holy Kingdom to be divine servants. Chief Guardian, this is not fair. We still have 1 month before the examination. Now that there is a ranking battle, our futures will be decided a month in advance. This is not fair. It is said that the Arctic Abyss is a very dangerous place. I have heard of the Glacier Divine Mine before. It is said that there are countless slaves and divine servants in that huge and dangerous divine mine. They mine divine stones day and night for the divine master. Oh no! Those who are ranked below 50 will be sent to the Glacier Divine Mine to work and lose their freedom like slaves. Why? Why is there a ranking battle in advance? Please take back your order, Chief Guardian. This is not fair to us. The young geniuses from various countries were filled with anxiety and fear, and they looked uneasy. Everyone whispered to each other and voiced their dissatisfaction and doubts. The chief guardian scanned the crowd sternly and raised his hands to signal for everyone to quiet down. Everyone, this ranking battle is indeed held at the last minute. It has never happened in the previous God-disciple selections. But this is an order from the God Kingdom, a decree from the God Lord, and we can only obey it. Everyone, there is no need to say anything more. Go back and prepare for the battle. I wish everyone good luck. With that, the chief guardian led the 6 divine envoys and left the square. The young geniuses from various countries stood in the square with complicated expressions. They gathered together to discuss this matter and were unwilling to leave for a long time. Apart from the top 10 geniuses, most of them were very worried. Their faces were filled with fear and uneasiness. It wasn't until an hour later when night fell that the crowd gradually dispersed. At the same time, in the east courtyard of Heaven's Saint Palace, Ji Tianxing was sitting upright in the secret chamber, meditating and cultivating with full concentration. Previously, he had been cultivating the 3rd level of the Sword Soul Tao and had already consolidated his martial foundation. After breaking through to the 6th level of the primordial soul realm, he could cultivate the 4th level of the cultivation technique. Therefore, after returning to Heaven's Saint Palace, he entered Qin Shin's tomb and checked the mysterious tombstone. The words on the 3rd tombstone on the right had indeed disappeared. On the 4th tombstone, There were a few lines of ancient words that recorded the fourth level of the Sword Soul Tao. Only 4 days had passed to the outside world. He had been cultivating in the secret chamber for 20 days, comprehending the mysteries of the fourth level of the cultivation technique. Chapter 1584. The fourth level of the path of the Sword Soul was very profound and difficult to understand. With Ji Tianxing's strength and talent, it would take him 2 months to comprehend it. However, for some unknown reason, he managed to comprehend it after cultivating for half a month. At this moment, he was cultivating the fourth level of the path of the path. He followed the mysterious and special route and continuously circulated his powers to nourish his primordial spirit. After half a month of cultivation, he could clearly feel that the power of his primordial spirit was increasing and the strength of his physical body was also increasing. Furthermore, he had cultivated the heaven and earth dharma body, secret skill, and the potential and limits of his physical body were also increasing. His strength was increasing steadily. Suddenly, he vaguely heard some voices in his mind. He was stunned and thought doubtfully, "That's strange. No one is transmitting messages to me, and there is no one else in the secret chamber. How can I hear voices?" He hurriedly stopped cultivating and calmed down to listen carefully. Soon he found some clues. Someone was talking in a low voice, and the source of the voice was in the secret chamber of the Heaven Sage Palace West Courtyard. A low and majestic voice was saying, "The ranking battle came too suddenly, and many disciples are not mentally prepared. Messengers, please calm them down." Then, the voices of a few middle-aged men and elders were heard. "Great Guardian, please rest assured that we will calm the disciples down. We will do as you say." Ji Tianxing was not unfamiliar with these voices. He immediately recognized that the people who were talking were the Great Guardian and the 6 messengers. They seemed to be discussing something important. At this moment, another gentle and benevolent voice was heard. "Great Guardian, what is going on with the ranking battle this time? This has never happened in the previous Disciple of God selections. Is there a problem with the Glacier Divine Mind?" Ji Tianxing was very familiar with this voice. It was the voice of the third guardian, Hong Qingtian. He heard it clearly and instantly frowned. He murmured doubtfully, "What ranking battle? Why is it related to the Glacier Divine Mind?" At this moment, the other messengers also chimed in and asked the Great Guardian what was going on. The Great Guardian was silent for a moment before he said in a heavy tone, "Everyone, I can tell you the reason for the ranking battle. However, everyone must keep it a secret. You must not leak it out to avoid causing panic among the disciples." Hong Qingtian and the other divine envoys agreed in unison, expressing that they would keep it a secret. Only then did the Great Guardian relax. He said in a low voice, "Everyone's guess is right. There is indeed a problem with the divine glacier mine. In the past month, many people had gone missing or died in the Ice Mountain divine mine. Their deaths were horrifying, and their causes of death were bizarre. Every day, hundreds of slaves and miners would lose their lives. Even the overseers would lose 3 to 5 divine servants every day. In just over 20 days, more than 10,000 miners had died, and more than 100 divine servants had died mysteriously. Currently, the Ice Mountain divine mine was short of manpower. Everyone was in a state of panic. It was almost impossible for them to mine the mine normally. Therefore, the frozen martial monarch guarding the divine mine sent me a secret letter, requesting God Bestowment Mountain to send a group of divine servants to fill the vacancy as soon as possible." Hearing the Great Guardian's words, everyone came to a sudden realization. The divine envoys began to discuss in a heavy tone and raised many questions. The divine glacier mine is guarded by a large number of elite guards. The slaves and miners aren't mortals either. They all have the strength of a soul refinement realm cultivator. Moreover, the overseer's divine servants have all reached the primordial spirit realm. No matter what, it's impossible for such a thing to happen there. Great Guardian, such a thing happened in the divine glacier mine. Did the frozen martial monarch not investigate carefully? What exactly caused it? As everyone knows, the divine glacier mine is a forbidden area and also an important industry under the divine master. Every year, that divine mind produces a huge amount of divine stones to supply the divine nations, God Bestowment Mountain, and several forbidden areas. I really can't figure out who is so daring as to commit murder in the divine glacier mine. A moment later, when the discussion of the divine envoys stopped, the great guardian spoke. Everyone, after the incident in the divine glacier mine, the frozen martial monarch has been investigating the cause. However, he still hasn't found the result of the investigation and is unable to find the culprit behind the scenes. Our God Bestowment Mountain and the divine glacier mine are both forces under the divine master. Everyone has equal status. Therefore, it's not good for me to ask the frozen martial monarch in detail, and it's even more impossible for me to interfere in this matter. What we need to do is to send a group of divine servants to the divine glacier mine as soon as possible. The divine envoys were all silent. They also understood the reason why the great guardian wanted everyone to keep it a secret. If this matter were to spread out, those divine servants who were to be sent away would definitely rather die than obey. After a moment of silence, Hong Qingtian suddenly asked, "Great Guardian, you said that the miners and divine servants died in a terrifying manner and the cause of death was mysterious and bizarre. Can you tell everyone how terrifying and bizarre it is?" The great guardian didn't hide anything and said truthfully, "Elder Hong, in the secret letter sent by the frozen martial monarch, he mentioned this point. According to him, those miners and divine servants who died tragically had all turned into dried corpses. They were like pitch-black charcoal, losing all their flesh and souls. Everyone died in a very painful manner, but before they died, there were no signs. The frozen martial monarch sent people to investigate, but they didn't find any traces of fighting." Hearing this, the divine envoys all sucked in a breath of cold air. Clearly, they were filled with shock. Such a miserable death is indeed terrifying. They died silently, and even the cause of death can't be investigated clearly. The culprit behind this must be an extremely savage expert. Since the matter of the glacier divine mine hasn't been resolved and the culprit hasn't been found, aren't we sending a group of divine servants to their deaths? The great guardian said with a solemn tone, "I am the same as everyone here. I have the same worries and worry about this. However, we can only do our part well. As for the disciples ranked outside of the top 50, even if they are sent to the glacier divine mine, that is their fate. Whether they live or die, and what their future will be like, would depend on their own fortune." Speaking up to here, Hong Qingtian and the divine envoys all sighed helplessly. Not long after, everyone's secret conversation ended. The great guardian and the divine envoys all left the Heaven Saint Palace's western court. Ji Tianqing listened to everyone's secret conversation and was also filled with doubts. His expression was grave as he pondered. Something happened at the glacier divine mine. A large number of miners and divine servants died mysteriously, and there was a shortage of manpower. Therefore, God Bestowment Mountain held a ranking battle a month in advance. The eliminated geniuses will be demoted to divine servants and sent to the glacier divine mine to fill the vacancies. However, why do the deaths of those miners and divine servants feel so familiar? Chapter 1585. In the Tian-Xian continent, Ji Tianqing had interacted with the demons for many years. His understanding of the demons far surpassed that of most people. Thus, when he heard the chief enforcer describe the deaths of the miners and divine servants, he immediately thought of the demons. In addition, when he had left the goddess Tier Lake, he had been ambushed by 2 blood gods. The truth was that the ancestral demon god had already settled down in the Shenwu continent. Furthermore, it had created a large number of blood gods and had its own power. Ji Tianqing could not help but suspect that the tragedy at the Glacier Divine Mine was related to the demons. Since ancient times, the demons have been trapped in the Tian-Xian continent and have never come to the Shenwu continent. The people of the Shenwu continent do not know or understand the demons. The glacial martial lord guarding the Glacier Divine Mine will find it difficult to investigate the truth of the tragedy, much less deal with the culprit. As he muttered to himself, His expression became more and more gloomy. If the tragedy at the Glacier Divine Mine was really caused by the demons, then the consequences would be unimaginable. The demons slaughtered tens of thousands of miners and divine servants and devoured a large amount of blood and spirits. Their strength will definitely soar, and the ancestral demon god's power will quickly increase. This was definitely a huge threat to him. No, I can't sit by and watch the demon god strengthen his power. I have to think of a way to stop it and find it as soon as possible to completely eliminate it. He had already made up his mind to make a trip to the Glacier Divine Mine. But before that, he had to make sufficient preparations. He needed to cultivate for a few more days to consolidate his martial arts realm and investigate the details of the Glacier Divine Mine. Furthermore, he had to clarify the most important question. The chief enforcer and a few divine envoys are secretly discussing important matters in a secret room in the West Courtyard. I'm thousands of meters away from them, and there's a soundproof array in the room. How could I hear their conversation? He furrowed his brows tightly as he speculated, full of doubts. Could it be that cultivating the fourth level of the path of Sword Soul has stimulated my potential, causing my five senses to surpass their limits and greatly increase my abilities? In order to verify this conjecture, he held his breath and listened attentively to the movements around him. Soon, he heard some chaotic noises coming from all directions into his mind. In the depths of the Heaven Saint Palace, a gentle breeze blew through the trees, producing rustling sounds. A few colorful butterflies were fluttering among the flowers, their wings fanning the airflow, making a slight sound of the wind. Outside the Heaven Saint Palace, in a palace roughly 10 li away, several maids were whispering to each other. Two golden armor guards were discussing martial skills and cultivation methods in a low voice in the secret room, verifying and communicating with each other. Within a radius of 10 miles, no matter whether it was in the sky or on the ground, outdoors or indoors, nothing could escape his detection. Even if those chambers had essence soul-level array formations and soundproof array formations, they were useless against him. This discovery made him excited, shocked, and incredulous. My probing ability has indeed surpassed the limits and reached an unimaginable level. I really didn't expect the Sword Soul Tao to have such a miraculous effect. He muttered to himself excitedly, his eyes shining brightly. At this moment, the voice of the Burial of Heaven suddenly sounded in his mind. In the past, Kenshin once said that although the human race is the weakest race in the world, it is also the most mysterious and the most powerful race. This is because the human race has limitless potential and will never have a limit. Ji Tianxing was momentarily stunned. After carefully pondering over his words, he immediately understood the meaning behind them. Burial of Heaven, you mean that my potential has increased greatly, but it has only broken past my previous limit. In reality, when I reach a higher level of cultivation and cultivate more profound cultivation methods, my limit will also continue to increase? Exactly. The Burial of Heaven said calmly. Although you have cultivated the fourth level of the Sword Soul Tao, your potential has been stimulated and your strength has increased rapidly. However, this is not the reason why you have such an incredible hearing ability. Not because of the Sword Soul Tao. Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion and asked, then why? The Burial of Heaven said solemnly, because the memories of Kenshin that you possess are gradually awakening and releasing. Your heavenly ear ability has awakened. Heavenly ear ability? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. That's right, the Burial of Heaven said with certainty. This is one of Kenshin's abilities. Ji Tianxing was even more interested. He asked expectantly, I actually awakened Kenshin's heavenly ear ability? Could it be because of the Kenshin bloodline? Perhaps. The Burial of Heaven replied with an emotionless tone. Ji Tianxing asked again, then what other abilities does Kenshin have? The Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said with a strange tone, Kenshin once reached the peak of the myriad worlds and became the king of gods. He has countless abilities. Even if I talk for days and nights, I wouldn't be able to finish all of them. Oh, that's true. Ji Tianxing thought that it made sense, so he changed his tone and asked, then what about Qin Shin before he became a martial saint? What abilities did he have? The Burial of Heaven patiently explained, I can't remember some of them, but other than the Heavenly Ear ability, there are also the Heavenly Eye and 100 Transformations ability that I can remember. The Heavenly Eye ability allows you to see through all disguises and karma, including all kinds of concealment techniques. It has endless uses. The 100 Transformations ability allows you to change your appearance at will. You can turn into anything, large enough to become a mountain range, small enough to become a speck of dust. Ji Tianxing was excited as he listened, and a strong sense of anticipation grew in his heart. I wonder, when will I be able to awaken the Heavenly Eye and 100 Transformations ability? The Burial of Heaven said indifferently, that will depend on your own luck. No one can help you, but the faster your strength increases, the more abilities you will awaken. Recently, you should often awaken some of your soul memories and see a lot of messy images. Don't ignore those memory fragments. Try to merge them as much as possible. Those memories are very important. Ji Tianxing remembered its advice. After hesitating for a moment, he asked the question that had been hidden in his heart. The Burial of Heaven. I'm very similar to Qin Shin, and I'm always mistaken by some people. Now, I'm constantly awakening my soul memories and awakening Qin Shin's abilities. There are too many doubts that make me doubt my identity. Tell me, am I Qin Shin's reincarnation? The Burial of Heaven remained silent and did not answer. Ji Tianxing was unwilling to give up. He called out to it a few more times and asked this question. The Burial of Heaven was annoyed and could only answer him. Only you know the answer to this question. After saying this, it fell into a deep sleep and did not speak again. That's equivalent to not answering. I asked for nothing. Ji Tianxing showed a helpless expression. He could only suppress this question in the bottom of his heart and leave it to be explored in the future. He continued to cultivate in seclusion and quickly increased his strength. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed in the outside world. Early in the morning of the third day, the young geniuses of various countries gathered in the square outside the temple. Chapter 1586. Early in the morning, the sun had just risen. Under the morning sun, the dazzling godly palace shone in all directions, looking holy and glorious. On the wide square in front of the palace, hundreds of young geniuses were gathered. They were divided into 6 groups. Most of them had grave expressions on their faces. Worry was hidden between their brows and their eyes. After all, everyone knew that the glacier mine was a cold and dangerous place. Once they were sent to the glacier mine as a servant, they would lose their freedom and their future in martial arts would be bleak. However, everyone had just finished their training and had obtained great benefits in the hidden territory, increasing their strength by a lot. No one could guarantee that they would be able to enter the top 50. Only the top 10 geniuses had such confidence. In the middle of the square, there was a huge golden shield that covered an area of 1,000 feet. That area was the arena for the ranking battles. Not long after, the head guardian brought the 6 messengers to the square. The head guardian did not waste any time and immediately announced the rules of the ranking battles. You're not allowed to use your battle pets or borrow the strength of others. You're allowed to injure your opponent, but you are not allowed to kill your opponent. You will draw lots to decide your opponent and fight one-on-one. After rounds of selection, the final ranking will be decided. This was the unspoken rule of the martial arts world, and none of the geniuses had any objections. Thus, the head guardian announced the start of the ranking battles. The 6 messengers each took out a dozen jade slips and threw them into the sky. There were a total of 99 jade slips, and each jade slip had a name and a mark. They represented the 99 geniuses participating in the ranking battles. The head guardian waved his sleeves and shot out a ball of dazzling light that enveloped the jade slips. The dazzling light spun quickly and messed up the order of the jade slips. After a few breaths, the 99 jade slips were distributed and they floated in the air in pairs. Only one jade slip floated in the air by itself. It meant that a lucky person did not need to participate in the first round and could directly advance to the next round. The head guardian took down the jade slips in the air and read out the names on the jade slips. Luo Haolin against Dai Jianqing. Wen Yuqin against Gu Yinfeng. Yin Wuk against Wu Qingshan. Qian Feiyang against Lei Qianxuan. Soon, the head guardian finished reading out the 49 jade slips. The 98 young geniuses were about to fight one-on-one and enter the first round. Everyone's expression became particularly complicated. There was a commotion and discussion in the crowd. Some people were secretly delighted, thinking that they could defeat their opponent and that victory was in their grasp. Some people's expressions became serious, their expressions of worry becoming even heavier. It was clear that they had encountered a formidable opponent. There were also a small number of people who were depressed, unable to voice out their bitterness. This was because their opponents were the geniuses of their own country. This was equivalent to an internal war. However, everyone knew that this was the result of a random draw and could not be changed. The last jade slip belonged to Qin Sanqiao. He didn't need to participate in the first round of the competition and directly advance to the next round. Although everyone felt that it was too much of a coincidence, they had no objections. After all, Qin Sanqiao deserved to be number one. Apart from that, many people noticed a problem. Ji Tianxing's name was not among the 99 people who participated in the ranking battle. This discovery made everyone feel complicated, and they began to discuss noisily. Ji Tianxing, this fellow, not only did he not participate in the Secret Realm trials, but he also did not participate in the ranking battle. He's too arrogant. He's simply looking down on the rules of Mount God Seal. This isn't fair. What right does he have to not participate in the ranking battle? Sigh, everyone don't be angry. After all, he's the son of God. Of course, the great guardian has to take special care of him. This bastard is just lucky. Otherwise, how could he be so arrogant? Everyone felt uneasy. They were going to participate in the ranking battle to determine their future. However, Ji Tianxing did not need to participate in the ranking battle. He could lie down and sleep in the Heaven Sage Palace. This huge contrast made everyone even more depressed, and their impression of Ji Tianxing was extremely poor. However, everyone could only discuss it and vent the resentment in their hearts. They could not be jealous of Ji Tianxing's status and treatment. No matter how much they discussed, they could not change anything. Not long after, the ranking battle began. Pairs of young geniuses walked into the defense array from all around the square and started to fight fiercely in the middle of the square. This was a battle that would determine their fate, and no one dared to let their guard down. Many young geniuses were fully armed and used all their strength. They used all their trump cards and only hoped to defeat their opponents. The process of the battle was very intense and exciting. Almost everyone showed their strongest side and used their most powerful trump cards. The colorful radiance of spells filled the entire defense array and lit up half the sky. All kinds of powerful secret skills collided fiercely in the defense array, and loud rumbling sounds reverberated in the sky. The earth trembled as the violent shockwaves continued to bombard the defensive formation. Many geniuses watched the battle intently, trying to understand each other's strength and trump cards. As time passed, one battle after another came to an end. Those who won walked out of the defense array with joy. Those who lost looked gloomy. Most of them were injured, and their eyes were filled with despair. After 6 hours, the first round of battles ended. The 49 winners and Qin Sanqiao had successfully advanced to the next round. These 50 people were the ones who advanced, and they had to continue to draw lots to determine the final ranking. The 49 geniuses who lost were the ones who were eliminated. If there were no accidents, they would be demoted to God's servants and sent to the Glacier's sacred mine. However, they had to continue to draw lots to determine the final ranking. Those who were in the top 10 of the eliminated would be qualified to challenge those who advanced, and they would have a chance to change their fate. This was the rule set by Mount God Sealing. Although it sounded complicated, it ensured fairness to the greatest extent. Thus, round after round of battles were carried out one after another. After 16 hours, it was late at night. The night wind was chilly in the square, and the moon hung high in the sky. The ranking battle had finally ended. The huge stone tablet at the side of the square lit up with a dazzling golden light, and the rankings were displayed. 99 names were arranged on the stone tablet in order. Most of them looked tired, and they had injuries on their bodies. However, some of them were gratified, and they looked happy. They were the top 50 geniuses who advanced, and they could continue to cultivate in Mount God's ceiling. However, some of them were dispirited, and they were covered in blood. Their clothes were tattered, and their hair was disheveled. They looked miserable. Their expressions and eyes were filled with pain and despair. They were the ones who were eliminated, and they would be sent to the glacier sacred mine to work. Moreover, the rankings of the top few geniuses had changed, and this attracted the attention of many people. The top 3 were still Qin Sangqiong, Song Zhanyu, and Jiang Ningxue. The 5th place was still Qian Feiyang. However, the 4th place was an unfamiliar name, Inwuk. Chapter 1587. When the crowd saw the ranking on the stone tablet, they thought their eyes were playing tricks on them. The name Inwu K was unfamiliar to them. Almost no one had paid attention to him. No one could believe that this ordinary guy had defeated Qian Feiyang and was ranked 4th. The crowd was in disbelief and started discussing excitedly. Inwu K? I have never heard of this name before. Where is he from? I remember now. This guy seems to be from the Chu Yun Empire. During the training in the mystic realm, there were 2 people who did not participate. One was Ji Tianxing, and the other was him. I remember that too. This guy did not participate in the training in the mystic realm, but his strength increased tremendously and he is ranked 4th? This is unbelievable. Everyone look, that guy is Inwu K. As a young genius shouted, countless people looked at the crowd from the Chuyin Empire and focused their attention on Inwu Quebec. Inwu K was wearing a white robe with star patterns and holding an yin yang umbrella in his hand. He had broken through to the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm, and his aura had become more restrained. He had a mysterious aura that was compatible with heaven and earth. Countless people were observing him and sizing him up. They looked at him with envy and jealousy. A few geniuses from the Outcloud Empire also crowded around him, congratulating him and praising him greatly. After all, he was now the #1 genius of the Chuyin Empire and the backbone of the crowd. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long were drowned in his dazzling light. Tonight was the night that he would make a name for himself. Previously, he had been a nobody. Now, he had become the center of attention. Even Qin Sangqiong, Song Zhanyu, and Jiang Ningxue looked at him in a new light. They were wary of him. While the crowd was sizing him up, Inwu K was looking at the ranking on the stone tablet. He had a gratified smile on his face. Young Master Ji is really a god, who in the entire Mount God bestowment is qualified to be compared to him. Although I have been studying the limitless yin-yang technique day and night, and have been cultivating this technique in a frenzied state, I missed the training in the mystic realm. However, I have successfully broken through to the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm, and my combat strength has increased tremendously. What young Master Ji said is true. This technique is definitely the most suitable technique for me. Inwu K thought to himself as a gratified smile appeared in his eyes. He was excited and filled with emotions. At that moment, Jiang Ningxue walked out from the crowd and came before Inwu Quebec. She looked at Inwu K coldly and asked him, "She and Ji Tianxing are both from the Chuyin Empire and have not participated in the training in the mystic realm. I really want to know what's your relationship with Ji Tianxing?" Inwu K glanced at her, and his lips curled into a playful smile. He asked in a mocking tone, "Jiang Ningxue, how are you related to young Master Ji?" Jiang Ningxue was startled. She didn't expect Inwu K to ask her such a question. "Shut up." Jiang Ningxue's face was filled with anger as she shouted coldly, "Don't talk nonsense." Inwu K laughed coldly and said in a mocking tone, "Huh, you're so easily angered. Did I hit the nail on the head?" Jiang Ningxue knew that she was not as good as him in a verbal battle. She did not want to waste time with him and asked directly, "Cut the crap. You did not participate in the training in the mystic realm and did not receive any rewards. How did you break through to the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm in 2 months? Previously, You were a nobody. Now, you can defeat Qian Fei Yang and take fourth place. This is very abnormal. Jiang Ningxue's words echoed the thoughts of many people. It was also the reason why they were puzzled. Many people looked at Yin Wu Kei with burning eyes, waiting to see how he would answer. Especially Qian Fei Yang. He looked at Yin Wu Kei coldly and with a tinge of hatred. Not long ago, he was crushed by Ji Tianxing and became Ji Tianxing's stepping stone. Now, Yin Wu Kei defeated him in front of everyone and took fourth place. He became a stepping stone again and became Yin Wu Kei's name. How could he not be angry? Not humiliated? Yin Wu Kei looked at Jiang Ningxue and then looked around. He could tell that everyone was interested in this question. Even the great guardian and a few divine envoys were looking at him, waiting for an answer. Therefore, he kept the yin-yang umbrella in his hand and said solemnly, I was able to break through to the next level, increase my combat power, and take fourth place because I cultivated in seclusion for 2 months. Many geniuses frowned. Obviously, they could not accept this answer. Jiang Ningxue sneered and said, What a joke. Which of the geniuses here did not cultivate diligently? There are many people who are more hardworking than you. Why didn't they break through? Yin Wu Kei laughed and said disdainfully, What they cultivate is rubbish. What I cultivate is the peerless technique that young Master Ji gave me. How can they be compared? Once he said that, everyone was shocked. Many geniuses' expressions changed. They were either angry or confused. Jiang Ningxue's expression also changed. She shouted, What? The peerless technique that Ji Tianxing gave you? What technique did he give you? How can it be so effective? Yin Wu Kei curled his lips and smiled. You are not young Master Ji's wife. Why should I tell you? You. Jiang Ningxue was so angry that her face turned white. Her eyes flashed with anger. Yin Wu Kei could not be bothered with her. He laughed coldly and turned to leave. Jiang Ningxue stood where she was. Her expression was complicated as she mumbled, To be able to increase Yin Wu Kei's power so much in such a short period of time, it must be a peerless technique. But Ji Tianxing has no background or power. How could he have such a technique? He and Yin Wu Kei are just normal friends. How could he give such a precious technique to Yin Wu Kei? This is impossible. Yin Wu Kei must be lying. She tried to deny it. She could not accept this fact. However, deep in her heart, she believed it. A sense of regret filled her heart. It made her feel like she had lost a treasure. She could not help but imagine that if she could be friends with Ji Tianxing, wouldn't that peerless technique belong to her? Plus, if Ji Tianxing could casually give a peerless technique to his friend, he must have something even more valuable. Thinking about this, Jiang Ningxue's emotions became even more complicated. Her expression was uncertain. The geniuses in the square were all discussing this. They were all shocked and shocked. Look at how confident Yin Wu Kei is. It doesn't look like he's lying. No wonder he didn't participate in the hidden territory trials. He received a peerless technique. Such a heaven-defying technique, and Ji Tianxing just casually gave it away. Could it be that such a peerless technique is nothing to Ji Tianxing? I was wondering why Ji Tianxing didn't participate in the hidden territory trials. Chapter 1588. Not long ago, many people were still rejoicing in Ji Tianxing's misfortune and secretly mocking him. They mocked him for being too conceited and arrogant, not participating in the trial of the secret territory and missing out on the opportunity to obtain treasures. However, he casually gave Yin Wu Kei a cultivation technique, and it allowed Yin Wu Kei's strength to increase by leaps and bounds in 2 months, making him the fourth genius. How inconceivable was this? Everyone finally understood why Ji Tianxing didn't participate in the trial of the secret territory. He already had so many precious cultivation techniques, and he didn't care about the reward of the trial of the secret territory. Furthermore, everyone thought a problem. Yin Wu Kei cultivated the cultivation technique that he gave, and his strength would increase by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Then, wouldn't his strength increase even faster if he cultivated the peerless cultivation technique in Heaven's Saint Palace and had the best treatment and resources? At the thought of this, many people's expressions changed. They were secretly guessing what level Ji Tianxing had reached now. At this moment, the head guardian announced the results of the ranking battle. Everyone, the ranking battle has ended. The disciples ranked below 50 have 2 days to rest. 2 days later, I will send people to escort you to the Glacier Divine Mine. The 49 eliminated disciples lowered their heads as their faces were filled with shame and unwillingness. Their eyes were filled with disappointment and despair. Very quickly, these eliminated disciples left the square and returned to their residences to rest. The top 50 geniuses remained in the square. The head guardian said in a dignified tone, "I would like to congratulate all of you for advancing in the ranking battle and being able to continue cultivating in God's Sealing Mountain. However, I have to remind all of you that you are only temporarily safe. 1 month later, the God-Disciple test will decide your fate. Those who fail the test will be demoted to God's servant and sent to the Glacier Divine Mine to work." Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed. The smiles on some people's faces froze as they revealed shocked expressions. Some people furrowed their brows and looked worried. Their expressions were grave. An invisible pressure, as heavy as a mountain, pressed down on everyone's hearts. The head guardian said again, "There is only 1 month left until the test. I hope all of you will work hard and cultivate diligently." After speaking, he left the square with a 6-god voice. The 50 young geniuses stayed on the square for a long time with complicated expressions before leaving. Everyone was silent, their hearts heavy. Everyone had made up their minds to train as hard as they could and try their best to increase their strength so that they could pass the God-Disciple assessment. No one wanted to be demoted to a divine servant and be sent to the Glacier Divine Mine to mine for the rest of their lives. The next morning, Ji Tianxing was cultivating in a secret room when a guard suddenly came to report that Wu Ke had requested an audience. After finishing his cultivation, he walked out of the secret chamber. When he entered the living room, Wu Ke had been waiting for him for a long time. He hurriedly came forward to greet him. "Young Master Ji, I hope I didn't disturb your cultivation?" Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head, motioning for him to sit down and talk. "It's not a bother. I was just about to come out of seclusion today. Tell me, why are you looking for me today?" Wu Ke retracted his smile and bowed towards him with a solemn expression. "Young Master Ji, I came to visit you today to thank you in person. Thank you for giving me the limitless yin-yang technique. It is indeed the most suitable technique for me. For the past 2 months, I have been comprehending this technique and cultivating in seclusion day and night. Today, I have finally comprehended this technique and successfully gained entry into it. That's why I dare to come and thank you." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "It's best that it suits you. This technique is very profound and contains boundless mysteries. It's worth it for you to spend your entire life studying it. By the way, I heard that there will be a ranking battle in the next few days?" "That's right." Wu Ke nodded and smiled. "The ranking battle ended yesterday. 50 geniuses advanced and will continue cultivating in Mount God Bestowment. The 49 geniuses who were eliminated will be sent to the Glacier Divine Mine to work." Ji Tianxing sized him up and smiled. "It seems that your strength has improved, and you have already broken through to the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm. You must have made a name for yourself in the ranking battle, right?" Wu Ke smiled. "Indeed, I can't escape young Master Ji's eyes. That's true. I defeated Qian Feiyang and ranked 4th. Everyone was stunned. Of course, this is all thanks to the yin-yang limitless art. If young Master Ji didn't give me this technique, how could I have such glory today?" Ji Tianxing was also stunned for a moment. He revealed an astonished expression. "You actually defeated Qian Feiyang and obtained 4th place? That's incredible. The Great Guardian and a few God envoys will definitely look at you in a new light. The geniuses of the various countries will also be jealous to death." Wu Ke smiled and nodded, humbly saying a few words. The two of them chatted for a while before Wu Ke bid farewell and left. He still had to continue cultivating the divine technique to prepare for the God-Disciple test a month later. Ji Tianxing also had matters to attend to. He walked out of the Heaven Saint Palace and rushed towards the Clear Sky Pagoda. He ascended to the 5th level of the clear sky pagoda and stepped into the divine book pavilion. As usual, the second guardian was covered in a black robe, revealing only a pair of eyes. She appeared in front of him silently. Ji Tianxing, why have you come back? She stared at Ji Tianxing and asked in an indifferent tone. Ji Tianxing glanced at her and replied indifferently. I came to the divine book pavilion to read books. Don't tell me I'm here to visit you. The second guardian was choked by his words. She frowned and snorted unhappily. Then she turned and left. Ji Tianxing ignored her and walked towards a bookshelf. He used his divine sense to search for books related to the divine glacier mine. Very quickly, 6 hours passed. He found hundreds of books related to the divine glacier mine in a few bookshelves and quickly flipped through them. After reading these books, he had a sufficient understanding of the divine glacier mine. The divine glacier mine was one of the few forbidden areas under martial god Taihao. It was located in the Arctic Abyss. The Arctic Abyss was located in the north of the Azure Dragon Empire. Roughly estimating, with his flying speed, it would take him around 8 days to reach the Arctic Abyss from Mount God Bestowment. The environment of the Arctic Abyss was extremely harsh. It was filled with endless dangers. Ordinary primordial soul stage experts would not dare to enter as they could risk their lives at any time. The divine glacier mine was located in the deepest part of the Arctic Abyss. It was extremely hidden and hard to find. According to the books, the divine glacier mine was the largest mining area in the divine kingdom of Taihao. There were at least tens of thousands of mines buried within it. These mines were all born in the Antiquity Age and had been growing for tens of thousands of years. The scale was shocking. The divine glacier mine would produce a huge amount of god stones, ores, and all sorts of precious gems every day. Chapter 1589. It was no exaggeration to say that the Glacier Divine Mine was the largest mine in the vast divine kingdom. The divine stones and precious stones it contained could not be completely mined even after tens of thousands of years. Once there was a problem with the divine mine, and it could not be mined normally, the vast divine kingdom and the other forbidden grounds would be lacking in resources and suffer great losses. Ji Tianxing believed that the glacial divine mine was so important that the glacial martial lord would definitely think of a way to solve the problem. But he still decided to make a trip and personally investigate the tragedy of the glacier divine mine. After all, it was very likely that the matter was related to the demon race. He would definitely not give up any chance to heavily injure the demon race. In the evening, Ji Tianxing left the divine book pavilion. He had just returned to the Heaven Saint Palace East Court when a guard came to report the news. Reporting to young Master Ji, the 3 protectors have come to visit and are waiting for you in the living room. Elder Hong is here? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and walked towards the living room. When he entered the spacious living room, he saw Hong Changtian sitting in the living room, drinking tea as he waited. After greeting Hong Changtian, he sat down to talk. Elder Hong, why have you come to find me today? Hong Qingtian revealed a kind smile and bowed with cupped fists. Tianxing, this old man, came to find you to express my gratitude to you in person. This old man took the Heaven Crystal Jade Divine pill that you refined. In the past month, I have been in seclusion to heal my injuries. The heavens have eyes. The injuries that have troubled this old man for hundreds of years have finally been cured by the Heaven Crystal Jade Divine pill. The strange divine poison in this old man's body has also disappeared without a trace. This is really too unbelievable. Tianxing, you have helped this old man greatly. It is equivalent to saving my life. Hong Qingtian's expression and tone were very sincere and also somewhat emotional. In fact, before taking the Heaven Crystal Jade Divine pill, he also did not dare to confirm whether this pill would be effective. Hundreds of years of recuperation and treatment did not have any effect. It had already caused him to despair and his heart to be as still as water. Originally, he did not have much hope, but now he was cured by the Heaven Crystal Jade Divine pill. The current him was in better condition than ever. His essence, energy, and spirit had also recovered to their peak. As time passed, his strength was also quickly recovering. It would not take long for him to return to the martial sage realm and return to his peak. How could he not be overjoyed and excited by such a great surprise? Ji Tianxing sized him up and observed him for a moment. Seeing that his injuries had indeed been healed, he revealed a gratified smile. Elder Hong is too serious. Refining the celestial crystal jade divine pill is as easy as lifting a finger. A venerable senior like you should be immortal and possess outstanding martial prowess. All right, you still have to collect the Earth Core Fire Crystal and the Outer Space Shinbing. With the help of these two materials, you will be able to completely heal your injuries for 3 years. Hong Chengtian nodded and said, "Yes, you don't have to worry about this matter. This old man has already sent people to collect it. When all the materials are gathered, this old man will look for you and ask how to use it." "Okay," Ji Tianxing responded. Hong Qingtian stroked his beard and said emotionally, "Tianxing, this old man has lived for more than 2,000 years. I have also reached the martial sage realm and held great power. It can be said that I have made my way through great storms and waves. This old man has met countless people, but I have never met such a monstrous genius like you. What I admire the most is that your talent is so outstanding, but you still have a kind heart and are willing to help others. This is really not easy. Back then, this old man said that I will repay your kindness tenfold. I will definitely not go back on my words. In the future, if you have any difficulties or needs, just tell this old man. This old man will definitely not refuse." As he spoke, Hong Chengtian took out a palm-sized purple treasure box from his space ring and handed it to him. "Tianxing, this Cosmos treasure box is a small token of my appreciation. You must accept it. The treasure box contains the cultivation resources that I have carefully selected for you. They are all things that you may need." "Elder Hong, I can't accept this gift." Ji Tianxing smiled and waved his hand, rejecting Hong Chengtian's kindness. He had helped Hong Qingtian to make the Sky Crystal Jade Magical Pill because he saw that Hong Qingtian was kind and was a respectable senior. Moreover, he had hit it off with Hong Qingtian. He had never thought of getting any benefits from Hong Qingtian, nor did he expect Hong Qingtian to repay him. However, the more he rejected, the more Hong Chengtian admired him. He insisted on giving the Cosmos treasure box to him. Ji Tianxing could not persuade him. He could only accept the Cosmos treasure box and thank Hong Qingtian. Hong Qingtian had successfully given out the gift, and he was in a good mood. He continued, "Tianxing, although you did not participate in the ranking battle, you are the son of God. This is not against the rules. However, in the next month, you still have to work hard to prepare for the God-Disciple examination. In another 20 days, the divine light will descend. You must not miss it. In the past, every time the divine light descended, he would go to the holy altar to bathe in the divine light and heal his injuries. Now that his injuries had basically recovered, there was no need for him to devour the divine light. He would rather let Ji Tianxing be baptized by the divine light and increase his strength quickly." Ji Tianxing understood his intention. He smiled and nodded. "Thank you for your reminder. I will go to the holy altar on time." "That's good." Hong Chengtian nodded slightly and said, "If there is nothing else, I will take my leave. Take care, Elder Hong." Ji Tianxing saluted him and sent him out of the living room. After Hong Chengtian left, he returned to his room and took out the Cosmos treasure box. He opened the box and found that there was another world inside the box. There were 4 alternate dimensions to store treasures. In the first dimension, there were hundreds of bottles of elixirs. They were all tribulation-level elixirs that Hong Qingtian had personally made over the years. There were hundreds of elixirs with different effects. Some could heal physical injuries, some could heal primordial spirit injuries, and some could strengthen primordial spirit power. Every upper-grade tribulation-level elixir could be sold for millions of spiritual stones. There were more than 2,000 elixirs in the hundreds of bottles that Hong Chengtian gave him. They were all upper-grade tribulation-level elixirs, and some were even supreme-grade tribulation-level elixirs. Just the hundreds of bottles of elixirs were priceless treasures. In the second dimension, there were more than 30 talismans. They were basically middle-grade and upper-grade tribulation-level elixirs. These talismans had all kinds of powerful effects. Some could stimulate one's potential and temporarily increase one's combat strength. Some talismans could make one invisible, transform, and change one's appearance. There were also talismans that allowed one to teleport thousands of miles. There is no doubt that these 30-odd talismans were also a shocking amount of wealth. As for the third and fourth dimensions, there were some strange things, but they were all very precious treasures. Ji Tianxing did not have time to study those things for the time being. He only knew that the Cosmos treasure box that Hong Qingtan gave him contained no ordinary items. They were all treasures that would make one jealous. Elder Hong is really generous with such a valuable gift. It just so happens that I am going to the Glacier Divine Mine and might encounter danger. Chapter 1590. On the morning of the third day, the 49 prodigies from the 6 nations gathered in the square, ready to set off. The great guardian appointed Divine Master Lin Daoi as the envoy to escort everyone to the Glacier Divine Mine. Lin Daoi took out a palm-sized black boat from his interspatial ring and injected his Dharma power into it. Suddenly, the black boat expanded and quickly turned into a black spaceship that was 100 meters long. This was an exquisite and powerful Dharma treasure. It was used to transport resources and was very fast. Lin Daoi led the 49 geniuses onto the black flying ships and flew into the sky, leaving the God Bestowment Mountain. Ji Tianxing quietly left Mount God's ceiling and secretly followed the spaceship to the north. In order to keep it a secret, he used the divine concealment step to travel. Even though the spaceship was as fast as lightning, he could follow it closely and not be shaken off. He also wouldn't be discovered by Lin Daoi and the others. The journey was a bit boring. Everything went smoothly. They didn't encounter any danger. The black spaceship flew for 7 days and 7 nights before entering the Arctic Abyss. The so-called Arctic Abyss wasn't an abyss, but an area with a radius of 1,000,000 miles. This area was a forbidden area. The temperature was extremely low, and there were huge glaciers, deep pits, and bottomless pits everywhere. Looking around, the world was covered in silver and ice. The ice mountains reflected a faint blue light, which was a bit dazzling. The sky was covered by thick gray clouds all year round. It was very oppressive. The ground was uneven and filled with ice mountains, ice plains, and valleys. Huge sinkholes and mysterious abysses could be seen everywhere in this area. No one knew what secrets and dangers were hidden in those sinkholes and abysses. After the spaceship entered the Arctic Abyss, it slowed down and seemed very cautious. Ji Tianxing followed along and used a lot of Dharma power. He took the opportunity to take out some pills and consume them to recover his Dharma power. On the morning of the 8th day, the spaceship was flying over a glacial canyon. Cold wind whistled in the canyon, and an extremely cold air suddenly surged toward the spaceship. Swoosh! In an instant, a thick layer of ice formed on the surface of the black spaceship. The spaceship was frozen on the spot, and its flying speed decreased drastically. It was about to fall into the canyon. At this moment, a wide gully suddenly appeared in the glacier canyon. A giant pitch-black palm with a radius of 1,000 feet suddenly stretched out from the 10-mile-long crack and grabbed at the spaceship in the sky. The giant hand was furry, and its black nails were long and sharp, shining with a frightening cold light. His incomparably thick arms contained a terrifying power that seemed to be able to destroy the world. Ji Tianxing followed behind the spaceship and witnessed this scene with his own eyes. Suddenly, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. He did not expect that there would be a giant beast hiding in the glacier canyon and taking the opportunity to sneak attack the spaceship. The huge black claw was about to grab the frozen spaceship. Ji Tianxing's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but worry for Lin Daoi and the other 49 geniuses. However, right at this moment, the pitch-black spaceship suddenly lit up with a resplendent 5-colored brilliance and exploded with a loud boom. Kacha-kacha, accompanied by a crisp cracking sound. the solid ice that sealed the spaceship exploded in a fine powder and splashed in all directions. The spaceship also suddenly accelerated to the limit and turned into a five-colored stream of light, flying forward for 10 miles. Such a fast speed was like an aurora, comparable to teleportation. The huge black palm that covered the sky suddenly missed and slammed into the ice mountain on the other side of the canyon. Kaboom! Amidst the deafening loud noise, the ice mountain that was thousands of feet tall was smashed into pieces by the huge palm, turning into billions of ice shards that splashed everywhere. The entire glacier canyon was shrouded in ice that covered the sky. The loud noise reverberated in the canyon, shaking several ice mountains to the point that cracks appeared. The spaceship was lucky to have escaped this calamity. It did not stop at all and frantically flew forward. In just a few short breaths, the spaceship disappeared into the horizon. Ji Tianxing did not dare to stop and hurriedly flew over the canyon, chasing after the spaceship deeper into the canyon. Fortunately, the giant beast hiding in the canyon did not jump out to chase after them. The huge palm that covered the sky retreated into the canyon's crack and quickly disappeared. After experiencing this incident, Ji Tianxing truly understood why the Arctic Abyss was called a forbidden area. The mysterious giant beast hiding in the canyon definitely had the strength of a tribulation transcendence realm expert. Fortunately, Lin Dowie was a tribulation realm expert, and the spaceship was also a tribulation-grade Dharma treasure. Only then could he escape the calamity. If it were an essence soul realm martial artist, he would definitely be captured by the huge claw and become food for the mysterious giant beast. For the next day, Ji Tianxing followed behind the spaceship. He witnessed several attacks with his own eyes. There were powerful demon beasts hiding in the glacier, giant birds that covered the sky, and even demons condensed from extreme ice. Some demon beasts moved alone, while others moved in groups. However, their strength exceeded the essence soul realm and had reached the tribulation transcendence realm. The spaceship fell into a dangerous situation several times and was almost shot down and destroyed. Fortunately, Lin Dowie was experienced. The spaceship's defensive strength was powerful, and it eventually survived. The harsh environment of the Arctic Abyss was a forbidden area for human warriors, but it became a paradise and treasure land for powerful demon beasts. This was especially so for tribulation transcendence realm demon beasts. They hid in the Arctic Abyss and absorbed the heaven and earth spiritual energy to survive the heavenly tribulations again and again. Ji Tianxing knew very well that the Arctic Abyss seemed barren and lacking in resources, making it unsuitable for cultivation. In fact, there were endless mineral veins hidden under the glacier. They contained rich resources, heaven and earth spiritual energy, and treasures. An entire day passed. Late at night, the spaceship finally arrived at the deepest part of the Arctic Abyss. The spaceship stopped above a huge abyss that spanned 500 kilometers and slowly descended into the abyss. Ji Tianxing hid in the sky and looked down at the abyss from above. He saw some clues. The 500-kilometer-wide abyss was like a black hole in the glacier. It was huge and mysterious. The black hole was surrounded by glaciers and cliffs. A powerful defensive array formation was set up, forming a 500-kilometer-wide barrier that protected the entrance to the abyss. The five-colored barrier was half a meter thick. It was a saint-level array formation, and its defensive strength was unparalleled. Ordinary warriors and demon beasts would not be able to enter the abyss. Without a doubt, the abyss was the famous glacier divine mine. The spaceship landed at the entrance to the abyss and stopped outside the five-colored barrier. Not long after, a group of armored guards flew out of the abyss. Leading them was a stout, middle-aged man dressed in golden armor. He exuded an austere aura. The other 9 silver-armored guards had strength at the 8th firmament essence soul realm. All of them had sharp auras and were clearly elites. Chapter 1591. A door opened in the five-colored light barrier that enveloped the abyss. The flying ship passed through the door, entered the abyss, and slowly flew down. Ji Tianxing followed closely behind the flying ship and silently entered the abyss. While diving, he silently observed the terrain of the abyss. The abyss was like a gourd. The entrance was only 1,000 miles wide, and it became wider as he went down. In the dark abyss, there were steep glaciers all around. Ordinary people couldn't climb at all. Soon, the flying ship flew down for 20 miles and landed on a vast open space. This open space was like a wide platform formed by ice that hadn't melted for 10,000 years. It was at least 1,000 miles wide. Hundreds of palaces and residences made of ice crystals sat on this platform. Tianqing knew at a glance that those were the residences of the miners and divine servants. In the centermost area, there was a huge and majestic ice castle that looked especially sacred and solemn. The cold ice martial lord who guarded the divine mine lived in that castle. Tianqing hid in the dark night sky and silently observed for a while. He found some clues. That ice castle was the core of the entire area. There were a total of 360 ice palaces around it. They were arranged according to the celestial constellation's position and formed an invisible array. If there was an invasion, it would be very difficult for them to break through those hundreds of palaces, let alone enter the ice castle. Just as Tianqing was thinking silently, the flying ship landed on the huge square outside the palaces. There were hundreds of ice crystal statues around the square. They were lifelike and looked very majestic. After the flying ship landed, Lin Daoi walked out first. Immediately after, the 49 young geniuses walked out of the flying ship and stood on the square. Everyone had just left the flying ship and came to the dark and cold abyss for the first time. They couldn't help but shiver as they looked around with solemn expressions. The unfamiliar divine mine and the harsh environment made everyone's mood heavy. The atmosphere was rather gloomy. At this moment, 5 dazzling streams of light flew out from the ice castle in the distance. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After a short while, the 5 streams of light came to the square and landed beside Lin Daoi. When the light faded, 5 figures of different heights appeared. The leader was a thin old man in a blue robe with white hair and a beard. This person's skin was dark and his eyes were bright. His entire body emitted a powerful and fierce aura. Following behind the blue-robed old man were 4 middle-aged men in golden armor with dignified auras. Lin Daoi stood in front of the blue-robed old man and cupped his hands respectfully. Divine Envoy Lin Daoi of Mount God Bestowment greets Steward Du. The blue-robed old man called Manager Du was the trusted aide of the cold ice martial lord, his most valued right-hand man. He was in charge of all the affairs of the entire divine mine. He had the power to decide the life and death of the miners and supervisors. He truly had a high status and great authority. He calmly looked at Lin Daoi and nodded slightly. Divine Envoy Lin, you have escorted the divine servants all the way here. You must be tired from the journey. You must have worked hard. Manager Du, you're too polite. This is my duty. Lin Daoi exchanged pleasantries with him and said a few words. Then, Lin Daoi greeted the 4 golden-armored men and bowed to each other. The 4 golden-armored men were all in the 3rd or 4th level of the Tribulation Realm. They were the 4 commanders of the northern mining area. After exchanging a few words, Manager Du ordered the 4 commanders, the 4 of you, bring the divine servants sent by Divine Envoy Lin to the northern district and settle them down. Let them have a good night's rest. We'll start work tomorrow. Understood. The 4 commanders cupped their hands and accepted the order. Then, they brought the 49 geniuses and left the square. They flew to the northern area of the palace complex and stayed in one of the palaces. In a huge square, only Lin Daoi and Manager Du were left. The 2 of them had known each other for many years. In the past, when Lin Daoi escorted the divine servants, it was Manager Du who handed them over. The 2 of them walked side by side to the edge of the square. Under their feet was the bottomless abyss. Lin Daoi said in a heavy tone, Manager Du, is this matter so urgent? The divine servants have just arrived, and we're going to start work in the mining area tomorrow. Manager Du nodded slightly and looked at the night sky with cold eyes. He said, "After the incident in the northern mining area, there are only a dozen supervisors and thousands of miners left. Now that everyone is in a panic, the northern mining area can no longer operate normally, causing the supply of spirit stones and various gems to sharply decrease. We can't delay any longer. These divine servants have to be sent to the mining area tomorrow. Otherwise, if the divine mine doesn't hand over the supplied spirit stones, the divine nation will soon discover the problem." Hearing this, Lin Dowie's body trembled and his eyes revealed a look of surprise. "Manager Du, you mean? Cold Ice Martial Monarch hasn't reported this matter to the divine nation?" Manager Du turned his head and glanced at him. With an indifferent expression, he said, "Divine Envoy Lin, Cold Ice Martial Monarch is highly regarded by the Divine Master. He has guarded the Glacier Divine Mine for 1,000 years. During this period, there have never been any major problems or twists and turns in the Divine Mine. Now, such a thing has happened in the Divine Mine. Before the truth of the matter is investigated, do you think it can be reported to the Divine Nation? If the Divine Master knows the news, what will he think?" At this point, Manager Du paused for a moment. He looked gloomily at the cliff below and sneered bitterly. The Divine Master will definitely be very disappointed. He will even feel that Cold Ice Martial Monarch can't even handle such a small matter. If we report it to the Divine Nation without investigating it clearly, do we have to wait for him to personally investigate? At that time, not only will Cold Ice Martial Monarch be punished, we, as servants, will also be dismissed and investigated. Manager Du's words were not alarmist. The previous martial monarch who guarded the divine mine was dismissed like this. Lin Dowie immediately fell silent, and his expression was somewhat ugly. He had always thought that Cold Ice Martial Monarch would definitely report the tragedy that happened in the divine mine to the divine nation. Divine Lord Taihao also knew about this matter. That was why he sent an order to God Bestowment Mountain to select a group of divine servants in advance and send them to the divine mine to fill the vacancy. However, this was not the case. Until today, Cold Ice Martial Monarch still concealed this tragedy and did not report it. Lin Dowie recalled what the Great Protector said before and remembered that the Great Protector only said that he communicated with Cold Ice Martial Monarch in a secret letter and did not mention the Divine Lord's order. Thinking of this, Lin Dowie's mood became even more complicated. "Manager Du, what is the truth of the tragedy? Have you found any clues or leads?" Manager Du did not speak and only shook his head. Lin Dowie was even more worried. He frowned and asked, "Since the matter has not been investigated clearly, then send the divine servants to the mine a few days later. If we send them to the northern mine tomorrow, wouldn't we be sending them to their deaths?" Manager Du said coldly, "Divine Envoy Lin, our mission is only to maintain the operation of the divine mine. It can continuously produce spirit stones and gems to supply the various forbidden areas and divine nations. As for the life and death of those divine servants, it is not within our consideration." Chapter 1592. Manager Du's words were filled with indifference and ruthlessness towards life. Lin Dowie's expression became even more complicated. He sighed inwardly, but there was nothing he could do. After all, he was from Mount God's ceiling and had no right to interfere in the matters of the Glacier Divine Mine. Moreover, his status was far inferior to Manager Du's, so he had no right to criticize Manager Du. He could only pray silently in his heart, hoping that Cold Ice Martial Lord would find out the truth as soon as possible and find the culprit behind the tragedy. Only then would the 49 young geniuses be able to escape this calamity. Both of them were silent. A moment later, Manager Du said, "Divine Envoy Lin, you must be tired after coming from afar. Please go to the castle to rest for a few days. After Cold Ice Martial Lord has finished dealing with the matters of the mine, he will personally receive you." Lin Dowie was responsible for escorting the divine servants to the mine. Cold Ice Martial Lord had to accept the people and had to meet with Lin Dowie face to face to sign an agreement. This was the rule of Mount God's ceiling and the Glacier Divine Mine. It had always been like this. Lin Dowie didn't say anything else. He nodded and said, "It's all up to Manager Du." Then Manager Du took him away from the square and flew towards the distant ice castle. After the two of them left, a faint energy fluctuation flashed in the night sky at the edge of the square. It was Ji Tianxing, who was hiding in the dark. He had long known about the tragedy in the mining area and had come to investigate the truth. Therefore, he had been extra careful and hid in the dark to eavesdrop on the conversation between Lin Dowie and Manager Du. Manager Du's cold attitude made him feel disgusted. Although the 49 young geniuses were unrelated to him, they were all the young geniuses of the Empire. They were all young geniuses selected by the 6 empires, and they were also fresh lives. To be sent into the mining area and lose their lives without knowing what was going on was very unfair to them. It was very sad. However, Ji Tianxing had just arrived and didn't know enough about the situation in the mine. He was powerless to change anything. He could only hide in the dark and continue to observe the situation. Swoosh! He remained invisible and quietly flew through the dark night sky, entering the palace complex. 15 minutes later, he found the palace where the geniuses lived in the northern district of the palace complex. Beichen Palace. This palace made of ice covered an area of 100 meters and had 3 floors. The huge palace could accommodate more than 200 people. There were more than a dozen silver-armored guards guarding the palace's entrance and entrance. Ji Tianxing could tell that this palace was extremely exquisite, far surpassing ordinary palaces and courtyards. It was the residence of the overseers. This place used to be very dignified and lively. There should be over 100 guards here. With Beichen Palace. In the entire palace, apart from the 49 new divine servants, there were only a dozen or so old overseers. The Beichen. The dozen or so silver-armored guards also looked listless and absent-minded. Ji Tianxing hid outside the palace for 2 hours. After figuring out the situation, he tried to sneak into the palace. There were more than 200 rooms in the palace, most of which were empty. Ji Tianxing was hiding in an empty room, silently analyzing the situation and thinking about his next plan. The frozen martial monarch guarding the glacier divine mine. He didn't want to be punished by the divine lord. The divine mine is divided into 4 mining areas: east, west, south, and north. The tragedy happened in the north mining area. The north mining area is managed by the 4 protectors. There are 4 commanders under them. They are the 4 golden armored men. Under the commander were more than 100 overseers. They had died one after another in the past month. Now, only a dozen or so old overseers were still alive. The north mining area had 30,000 miners. More than 10,000 have died. Only half of them are left. The 49 divine servants will be sent to the mining area tomorrow. They will be supervisors and lead the miners to continue mining. This was the current situation. No matter how he looked at it, the 49 divine servants couldn't escape. They were destined to die, but they didn't know the situation and were kept in the dark. Ji Tianxing had investigated. The dozen supervisors who knew about the tragedy were scared out of their wits. They hid in their rooms and refused to come out. They wouldn't leak any information about the tragedy in the short term. After thinking for a while, Ji Tianxing came up with a plan. There are a large number of guards inside and outside the mining area. The defense is very tight. Even if I can move stealthily, it's very likely that my whereabouts will be exposed. At that time, it will cause unnecessary trouble. For the sake of secrecy and convenience, I can't show my real face. I have to find a way to disguise myself. After making up his mind, he left the room and quietly sneaked into another room. The one who lived in this room was one of the 49 divine servants. This person was called Kolan, a young genius of the Lufeng Empire. The key was that this person's height, body shape, and hairstyle were somewhat similar to Ji Tianxing. When Ji Tianxing sneaked into the room, Kolan was sitting in a daze. He looked depressed, and his eyes were dim. Obviously, this guy was still immersed in disappointment and pessimism. Taking advantage of his daze, Ji Tianxing attacked without hesitation. He released a powerful divine sense shock wave and fiercely attacked him. Wong. In the divine sense level, a soundless sound burst out. Kulan's body shook. His vision turned black, and he fainted, losing his consciousness. After he fell to the ground, Ji Tianxing used a secret technique to seal his primordial spirit. For at least half a month, Kulan would be unconscious and in a deep sleep, unable to wake up on his own. Ji Tianxing put him into the sword world, and then took out a talisman from his space ring. Appearance, changing talisman. He shouted in a low voice. His hands formed a seal, urging a majestic Fa Li to ignite the talisman. Suddenly, the talisman ignited with a golden flame, turning into a mysterious golden light that enveloped his entire body. Under the control of his mind, his appearance and facial features began to undergo subtle changes. After a few breaths, the mysterious golden light dissipated. He also shook his body and turned into Kulan's appearance. Unless it was someone very close to him, no one would be able to see the difference in flaws. Ji Tianxing changed into Kulan's clothes and hair accessories, then sat in the room to meditate and cultivate. The night passed quickly. Early the next morning, the 4 golden armored commanders came to the North Star Palace and gathered the 49 divine servants. After everyone was gathered, the 4 commanders led everyone out of the North Star Palace and flew towards the bottom of the abyss. Without a doubt, everyone was going to the North mining area today to lead the miners to start mining. Ji Tianxing disguised himself as Kulan and blended into the crowd. No one noticed anything unusual. Everyone continued to fly down the abyss. After flying for more than 200 miles, they reached the deepest part of the abyss. Chapter 1593. They were already deep in the Earth's core. The huge pit in the ground, as well as the surrounding mountain walls, were not made of ice, but solid rocks. These dark brown rocks contained rich metal components, mixed with layers of spirit stone veins. Without a doubt, they had reached the mining area. The 4 tunnels around the huge pit led to the east, west, south, and north mining areas. Each mine was 1,000 feet high, like the mouth of a giant beast that was about to devour its prey. The 4 commanders led the group into the north tunnel, following the wide and dark tunnel, heading towards the north mining area. The main tunnel was straight, slanted downwards, and led to a few hundred kilometers underground. Every 5 kilometers, a side tunnel would be cut into the walls of the main tunnel, leading to the depths of the ore veins. If the main tunnel was the trunk of a tree, then the side tunnels were the branches. They were densely connected to the trunk, forming a huge network of tunnels. Every side tunnel had a number, making it easier to distinguish and manage. The group flew for more than 200 kilometers in the main tunnel before stopping at the entrance of tunnel number 42. One of the commanders called out the names of the 4 divine servants and ordered, "The 4 of you will be in charge of this tunnel number 42 from today onwards. There are more than 800 miners inside. You can assign the manpower as you see fit. You must complete the mining mission. I will come here every 2 days to inspect. If you do not complete the mission, you will be severely punished." The 4 divine servants could only accept the order and enter the tunnel with gloomy expressions. Next, the group continued to walk in the main tunnel. Every time they reached a tunnel entrance, the golden armored commander would assign 4 or 5 divine servants to each tunnel. As time passed, the number of divine servants decreased. After 2 hours, more than 40 divine servants had been assigned. Only Ji Tianxing and 3 divine servants were left for last. One of the commanders led the 4 of them to tunnel number 59 and ordered in a dignified voice, "The 4 of you will be in charge of this tunnel number 59 from now on. There are more than 200 miners in this tunnel. The 4 of you can discuss among yourselves. No matter what, you must complete the mission every day. You must mine 10,000 spirit stones and 100 gems. I will come here every 2 days to inspect. If you do not complete the mission, your monthly allowance will be deducted, and you will be punished." The golden armored commander's surname was Ding. He was a thin, middle-aged man with a mustache. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. When Ji Tianxing and the 3 divine servants heard his words, they immediately frowned. "Commander Ding, why are there 800 to 1,000 miners in the other tunnels, but there are only 200 in mine number 59? That's right. Commander Ding said that there are at least 500 people in the tunnels, but we only have 200. Isn't it too little? We have fewer miners, but we have the same mission. Ji Tianxing's sharp senses told him that there was something wrong with the mine, so he raised his doubts first. The other three divine servants echoed his words and pleaded with Commander Ding, expressing that it was unfair. Unexpectedly, Commander Ding frowned and scolded them coldly. Bastards! This is the rules set by the higher-ups. How dare you criticize it? I will only follow the rules and carry out orders. No matter what method you use, you must complete the mission every day. Remember, you are here as slaves, not some bullshit genius. If you can't complete the mission, you will be punished. After saying that, Commander Ding snorted coldly and turned to leave. Everyone looked at his back as he left. They all frowned and their eyes flashed with shame and anger. Little did they know that Commander Ding was secretly muttering in his heart, "Damn it, these four brats are not easy to fool. How dare they complain to me?" However, Manager Du and the four guardians could not find out the truth. The miners in the other tunnels would rather die than come here. What can I do? It won't be long before these four hotheads and the 200 miners die an unnatural death, right? Thinking of this, Commander Ding felt a chill run down his back. He hurriedly sped up and left. Ji Tianxing and the three divine servants could only accept reality. They turned around and entered the 59, or mine. After entering the mine, the four of them sized up the terrain of the mine as they discussed. I've long heard that the Glacier Divine Mine is a burial ground. Countless people die of exhaustion every year. I didn't expect it to be true. The environment and conditions of the mine are worse than we imagined. Everyone should be careful. The one who spoke first was a red-robed youth named Wu Su. He was a young genius of the Thousand Snow Empire. I just don't understand. Why do others have thousands of miners while we only have 200? Did we offend that Commander Ding? That's impossible. We just arrived here yesterday and didn't do anything. The thin and tall youth named Zheng Rong grumbled with a gloomy face. He was a genius of the Qian Empire. Like Wu Su, he was at the 4th level of the Essence Soul Realm. Maybe that Commander Ding saw that the four of us were too handsome and stole his limelight. That's why he suppressed us. The black-robed youth named by Kaixin laughed in a self-deprecating tone. His smile was bitter. Only Ji Tianxing remained silent as he observed his surroundings expressionlessly. The three of them discussed for a while before looking at him. One of them asked, "Kalan, why aren't you saying anything? What are you thinking about?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said solemnly, "Our 59, or mine, is in the deepest part of the main mine. It's 300 miles underground. I have a feeling that there's something wrong with this mine. Everyone, be prepared." The three of them frowned and revealed worried expressions. "Kalan, don't scare us. What problem can there be in the mine?" "I think Kalan is right. I have the same feeling. Let's listen to him and be careful. Let's not worry too much. Let's take a look inside the mine first." The four of them walked through a winding mine tunnel and entered the mine. They arrived at the mining area. There was a huge and empty cave in front of them. The cave was surrounded by steep cliffs and precipitous rock walls. The dark brown rock walls shimmered with a clear brilliance, mixed with a layer of light blue spirit stones. On the ground and rock walls, man-made holes and cracks could be seen everywhere. More than 200 miners dressed in gray linen clothes were scattered in every corner of the mine. At a glance, the miners were dressed in tattered clothes and had messy hair. They looked rather sloppy. Furthermore, on the surface, they looked like they were casually digging into the rock walls to extract spirit stones and gems. Chapter 1594. Ji Tianxing and the three divine servants stood in the air of the mine, overlooking the situation. Seeing the appearance of the 200 miners, everyone frowned in confusion and began to discuss telepathically. There are indeed only 200 miners. Mining in such a huge mine, the number of people is pitifully small. Those miners are not ordinary people. Many of them have the strength of the soul refining realm. How could they be in such a sorry state? Looking at their appearance, they seem to be dispirited and their auras are chaotic and weak. They are in a terrible state. "Kalan, You seem to know the most. Can you see anything strange? The three divine servants discussed for a while and finally looked at Ji Tianxing with expectant looks. Ji Tianxing said calmly, "This is the deepest part of the divine mind and also the area with the densest number of veins. However, there are too many types of spirit stones, god stones, and gems in the veins, and the energy attributes are too heterogeneous. After working in the mind for a long time, the body and soul will be affected by the complex energy, resulting in disorder and imbalance. Therefore, the miners who work here will suffer the most damage to their bodies, and they will not live long." The three of them were taken aback, and their expressions turned ugly. "Kalan, don't be an alarmist. The veins are rich in spirit stones and gems, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here is very abundant. Logically speaking, it should be beneficial for our cultivation. Zheng Rong, Kalan is right. I have seen similar records in ancient books. When so many types of spirit stones and gems are mixed together, the energy attributes will be too heterogeneous, and it will create a chaotic and invisible force field, which is very harmful to martial artists. No way. Then if we supervise here for a long time, won't we also become short-lived ghosts? That shouldn't be the case. We are all primordial soul realm experts, so we should be able to resist the invisible force field." Ji Tianxing saw that they were still comforting themselves despite their complicated emotions. Clearly, they did not realize the seriousness of the matter. Therefore, he pointed at the miners who were in a terrible state and said, "Look at those miners carefully. They're dispirited and their eyes are unfocused. Their expressions are filled with worry, fear, and despair. Do you think that they have become like this only because of the invisible force field?" Wu Su quickly asked, "Kalan, what do you think is the main reason?" Bai Kaixian thought for a moment, then took the initiative to answer. "I think it's because of the high-intensity work. They only have 200 people, but they have to complete the work of over 1,000 people." Zheng Rong nodded in agreement. "I tested it earlier. The rock wall is extremely hard, comparable to a soul rank magic treasure. The difficulty of mining is extremely high. With just these 200 miners, they have to mine tens of thousands of spirit stones and 100 gems every day. It's simply killing them." Ji Tianxing shook his head and said in a heavy tone, "Don't guess blindly. Why don't you ask the miners? Wouldn't everything be clear?" Wu Su volunteered and flew to a cluster of rocks, landing in front of a few miners. The ragged miners were huddled together, whispering to each other, and had thrown aside their pickaxes and tools. Seeing Wu Su's sudden arrival, the miners were all startled. They retreated in fear, their bodies trembling. "Hey, what's wrong with you guys? I don't have any bad intentions, so what are you afraid of?" Wu Su was a little confused and asked doubtfully. The miners did not dare to look at him, and quickly picked up their picks and tools, scattering like birds and beasts. Wu Su could only fly back to Ji Tianxing's side and helplessly spread out his hands. "You guys saw it. Those miners are very afraid of me and did not speak at all." Zheng Rong said thoughtfully, "I think those supervisors in the past were too ruthless and scared them out of their wits." Ji Tianxing did not say anything and quietly flew to a cliff, landing beside 2 miners. The 2 miners were lying on the cliff, using their picks to dig at the rock wall, looking very weak. Ji Tianxing asked with a dignified expression, "Why are there only 200 miners left in this mine?" The 2 miners hurriedly stopped their work. Their faces were filled with fear as they bowed and saluted him. "Greetings, Senior Supervisor. Senior Supervisor, we are working hard and are not slacking off. Please be magnanimous." Ji Tianxing frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "I asked you a question, speak." The 2 miners were so frightened that they trembled and lowered their heads to look elsewhere, unable to speak. Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "If you dare to hide anything, each of you will be rewarded with 50 strokes of the military rod." The 2 miners were so scared that their faces turned pale and their eyes darted around, and they were so anxious that their foreheads were sweating. One of them was forced to speak under pressure. "Senior Supervisor, please spare our lives. It's not that we want to hide anything, but we really don't dare to say it, or we will lose our heads." Wu Su, Zheng Rong, and Bai Kai-xian, who were not far away, suddenly looked confused. The three of them looked at each other and quickly flew to Ji Tianxing's side and surrounded the two miners. Seeing that Ji Tianxing's threat was effective, they all followed suit. Speak honestly, what's the reason? If you two don't speak, I will definitely punish you severely. If you speak, I can spare your lives, but if you don't, you will die without a doubt. However, the three's threats did not have any effect. The two miners were so scared that they broke out in cold sweat, but they still clenched their teeth and kept their mouths shut and would rather die than speak. In such a situation, the three of them were completely helpless and could only look at Ji Tianxing for help. Ji Tianxing stared sharply at the two miners and asked, "If I didn't guess wrongly, there were originally thousands of miners in this mine. But not long ago, 600 to 700 miners had died. The 200 of you are survivors, but you were ordered by the leaders to keep your mouths shut, to not leak any information, or you'll be executed. Am I right?" Although it was just a guess, his tone was very certain. Every sentence, every word was like a sharp blade, stabbing into the hearts of the two miners. After the two miners heard this, they were so scared that their bodies went limp, and they cried and begged for mercy. "Senior Supervisor, please spare our lives. It's not that we want to hide anything, but we really don't want to die." "Sir, guessed right, but this is not what we said. Please have mercy." Ji Tianxing confirmed the guess in his heart, and his expression became even more gloomy. He waved his hand and indicated for the two miners to leave. The two of them immediately acted as if they had been pardoned and scrambled to escape to another place. Bai Kai-xian, Zheng Rong, and the other two looked at Ji Tianxing in shock, as if they were looking at a monster. "Kalan, your guess is actually so accurate? How do you know all these things? Could it be that you have already investigated? But why did those 600 to 700 miners die? Could it be that a disaster happened in this mine?" Up to this point, Ji Tianxing's series of actions had already convinced them, and they felt that he was very mysterious. Chapter 1595. After Ji Tianxing's reminder, Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and the other two all realized that there was something wrong with the mine. The three of them were somewhat worried, and they all asked Ji Tianxing if he knew anything about the inside story. Ji Tianxing did not say much, and he only gave them a few words of advice. Since the commanders and the 4 protectors have issued a gag order, this matter must be of great importance. Before the investigation is complete, we cannot make baseless guesses, or else we will be severely punished by the commanders and the 4 protectors. Everyone just needs to be on guard, and we can talk about this later. The most important thing right now is to quickly mine enough spirit stones and gems to complete the mission set by the higher-ups. The three of them understood what Ji Tianxing meant. Unknown dangers and disasters might come or happen at any time. However, if they could not complete the mission, they would be severely punished by Commander Ding in 2 days. This was a real threat. Soon, Wu Su, Bai Kai-xian, and Zheng Rong threw themselves into the mining work. They thought of ways to pacify the miners, and they used all sorts of threats and promises to force them to mine the ore. Of course, they were not idle either, and they used all of their skills to join the mining team. In fact, they did not hesitate to use some secret techniques to increase the speed of mining. For a moment, the large mine was bustling with activity, and there were clanking sounds everywhere. Ji Tianxing did not rest either, and he continued mining spirit stones and gems while observing the situation in the mine. Whether it was the pitch-black pit, the deep crevices, or the messy rocks, he carefully inspected them all. In a few hidden corners, he found some clues. There were a few pieces of bloodstained cloth and a few strands of hair. He used his divine sense to carefully inspect these pieces of cloth and hair, and he came to a conclusion. These were traces left behind by some of the miners before they died, and there was a very weak aura on them that he found familiar. There was no doubt that this faint aura belonged to the demons. Only he, who had a deep understanding of the demons, could sense it. If it had been anyone else in the mine, they would not have been able to recognize it. This discovery made his heart heavy, and his eyes shone brightly. From the looks of it, the miners and supervisors who died one after another were mostly killed by the demons. Who would have thought that the ancestral demon god would expand his influence so quickly after gaining a firm foothold in the Shinwu continent? 2 blood godsons tried to kill me on my way here, and now the demon race is causing chaos in the god's mind, massacring the miners. Actually, he also understood that the glacier god mine was very remote and the underground tunnels were very complicated. It was the most suitable place for the demon race to cause trouble. This was especially true for the miners, who were all at the sky origin stage and the soul refining stage. To the demon race and the blood god, these people were the best supplements that could help them improve their strength quickly. This place was simply the devil's paradise. However, as the nemesis of the devil race, he had come to the glacier divine mine. The time of death for the demons who had been causing trouble in the dark had arrived. Unknowingly, an entire day had passed. Late at night, the 200 or so miners were exhausted and listless. Ji Tianxing ordered the miners to rest for the night and continue mining the next morning. When the miners heard this, their eyes immediately lit up, revealing expressions of joy and gratitude. In the past, they had been forced to work day and night by their supervisors, and they could not slack off in the slightest. Otherwise, they would be whipped. They would often have to work hard for 28 days and nights before they could rest for 2 days. Ji Tianxing was unexpectedly benevolent, and he immediately won the goodwill of many of the miners. Everyone stopped working and gathered in groups of 3 to 5. They huddled up in various corners of the mine and slept with their clothes on. Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and Bai Kai-xian all came to Ji Tianxing's side and sat with him on a large millstone to discuss the next step of the plan. Kalan, although the miners are working very hard and look a little pitiful, we can't let them rest. I've already counted. Today, we've mined a total of 3,000 spirit stones and 30 gems. At this rate, we won't be able to complete the mission when Commander Ding comes to inspect us tomorrow night. Kalan, we've only just arrived at the mine, and it's our first time supervising, yet we can't complete the mission. With Commander Ding's personality, he'll definitely punish us severely as an example to others. The 3 of them were filled with worry and were rather anxious. Zheng Rong frowned and said gloomily, "Previously, I was thinking that if we can't complete the mission, we might as well take out some spirit stones each and hand it in when we have enough. But Commander Ding wants the spirit stones and gems raw ores. I wonder if we can hand in the finished product?" As he spoke, he took out 2 gray Chinquin bags and handed them to Ji Tianxing. These 2 bags contained the results of everyone's hard work for the day. Among them, there were over 3,000 spirit stone ores and 30 gems raw ores. Ji Tianxing was too lazy to count and directly took the Chinquin bags. He said with a solemn expression, "Everyone, don't be anxious. We'll work harder tomorrow. If we really can't complete the mission, we'll do as Zheng Rong said and ask Commander Ding to make an exception. Tonight, everyone will work harder. Try to be alert and pay attention to the movements in the mine at all times." The 3 of them nodded and then scattered to the corners of the mine, finding a hidden place to meditate and adjust their breathing. Ji Tianxing was sitting on a pile of rocks with his eyes closed, meditating and recuperating. Around him and above his head were huge craggy rocks, blocking him very tightly. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice him at all. Late at night, the light in the mine was dim and it was very quiet. There was only the snoring of some miners and the low whispers that flowed in the night sky. Unknowingly, it was already 3 in the morning. This was the darkest time before dawn, and also the most tiring time of the day. Wu Su and Bai Kai-xian had been secretly monitoring the movements in the mine for most of the night. Seeing that dawn was about to arrive and nothing unusual had happened in the mine, the 3 of them relaxed their vigilance. But at this time, in the southeast corner of the mine, there was a dark red blood light that silently appeared. That strange blood light drilled out from a pitch-black crack and spread across the ground like flowing water. No one noticed anything unusual. After a few short breaths, that blood light spread to the vicinity of a large millstone. There were 3 miners in ragged clothes lying on the large stone. They were curled up and resting, their consciousness groggy. Suddenly, the blood light silently spread out and enveloped the three of them. Wherever the blood light covered, whether it was skin, flesh, or clothes, it quickly corroded and turned into black ash. The three of them instantly woke up. They opened their eyes wide in shock and cried for help with terrified expressions. But they were enveloped by the blood light. They couldn't make a sound or move at all. In the blink of an eye, the three of them were sucked dry by the blood light. They became shriveled and curled up corpses. Chapter 1596. After the mysterious blood light quickly swallowed three miners, it continued to spread through the mine. After a few breaths, the four miners huddled together and huddled up in the mine for warmth were also killed by the blood light and turned into four dried corpses. Following that, more than 30 miners were killed by the blood-red light one after the other without making a sound. One after another, fresh lives were turned into dried corpses in their muddle-headedness and deep sleep. Their expressions of fear and despair, their desperate struggles before death, were all in vain. They were unable to make a single sound. The same scene played out over and over again. 45 minutes later, one of the miners turned over in a daze. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a red light not far away and a few ferocious-looking dried corpses. He was scared out of his wits on the spot. His eyes widened in shock, and his entire body trembled. After staring blankly for about 2 seconds, he cried out with a trembling voice, "Ah, the red shadow demon is here again." The sudden cry broke the silence of the mine. It echoed in the night sky and could be heard clearly from hundreds of miles away. Almost all of the miners were instantly woken up. No matter if they were in a deep sleep, half asleep, or too anxious to sleep, they all got up and fled towards the exit of the mine in a panic. They didn't dare to take another look. They didn't even dare to look for traces of the red shadow demon. They only wanted to leave the mine as quickly as possible. Obviously, this was already their habitual reaction. This kind of terrifying thing had happened many times in the past month. The mine became noisy and noisy. Cries of alarm could be heard everywhere. More than 200 miners fled the mine as if their lives were on the line, crowding at the exit. Ji Tianxing, Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and the others were also immediately woken up. However, when the first cry of alarm sounded, the mysterious blood light burrowed into the ground and disappeared. When Ji Tianxing and the other three rushed into the sky and looked around with sharp eyes, the mysterious blood light had already disappeared without a trace. What's going on? What happened? I didn't hear anything unusual. Why are these miners acting like they've seen a ghost? Wu Su, Zheng Rong, and Bai Kaixian all had puzzled expressions on their faces. Only Ji Tianxing's face was gloomy. His sharp eyes swept across every corner, searching for any abnormalities in the darkness. Suddenly, his gaze fixed on the southeast corner of the mine. "Come with me." He brought Zheng Rong and the other two across the dark night sky and arrived near a large rock in the southeast corner. Shockingly, 3 charred and dried corpses lay on the flat millstone, and their state of death was extremely miserable and hideous. Ji Tianxing frowned and observed with a gloomy face. Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and the other two jumped in fright, their faces instantly turning deathly pale. What? What's going on? Aren't these 3 miners? Why have they become dried corpses? This is 2. Their mouths. This was the first time the 3 of them had seen such a miserable death. Their hearts thumped wildly, and their emotions were somewhat anxious. Ji Tianxing observed for a moment, and a sharp cold light flashed across his eyes. He thought to himself, such a familiar scene is happening again. Looks like I guessed correctly. It's the blood godson of the god fiend who did this. At this time, Wu Su pointed at a mine not far away and let out a cry of surprise. "Quick, look over there. There are a few dried corpses too." The group hurriedly flew into the mine and checked the state of the dried corpses. Following that, Ji Tianxing, Zheng Rong, and the rest found even more dried corpses in the surrounding corners. The state of death of each dried corpse was similar. It was miserable and hideous, sending chills down one's spine. The four of them searched the entire mine and finally found 39 dried corpses. Under Ji Tianxing's request, Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and the other two braced themselves and piled the dried corpses together. Then, Ji Tianxing brought the three of them and rushed to the exit of the mine. There were more than 260 miners yesterday, but now there were only 220 left. The surviving miners were all hiding outside the mine, trembling as they huddled together, talking incoherently. Ji Tianxing walked into the crowd and ordered sternly, "All of you, follow me back to the mine." The miners lowered their heads and silently moved back. No one was willing to go back. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to use torture to threaten the crowd. But the miners were scared silly and refused to go back to the mine, even if they were beaten to death. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to calm the crowd outside the mine. "From the moment I came to this mine, I felt that something was wrong. You had more than 1,000 people before, but now there are only 200 left. It seemed that the so-called Red Shadow demons had killed those miners. Don't be afraid. The Red Shadow demon has already retreated. With us 4 supervisors here, we won't let harm you." A bold middle-aged miner gathered his courage and said, "The supervisors who were in charge of us said the same thing. But when the Red Shadow demon appeared, they ran faster than anyone else. They didn't even hesitate to sacrifice the miners to save their own lives." Ji Tianxing shook his head and said solemnly, "Please don't worry. We are not the kind of people who are afraid of death. Also, the Red Shadow demon has happened many times. We can't keep hiding like this. In the future, we will all have to work in the number 59 mine. If we can't get rid of the Red Shadow demon, we will all die." Hearing him say this, most of the miners nodded in agreement and gradually calmed down. Only a few miners who were scared out of their wits couldn't help but mutter. The 4 commanders and the 4 protectors investigated for half a month and still couldn't get rid of the Red Shadow demon. "How could you do it?" "That Red Shadow demon is invincible. It is the incarnation of an evil god. We will all become its food." Hearing this, many of the miners revealed frightened expressions. Their emotions fluctuated violently, and they were very frightened. "Bullshit!" Ji Tianxing cursed in anger and shouted coldly, "I know the so-called Red Shadow demon very well and have the means to get rid of it. Whoever dares to spread lies, I will kill him." As he spoke, golden light bloomed in his palm and condensed into a resplendent golden sword. Its sharpness was threatening. The miners were intimidated by his power and no longer dared to speak nonsense. They all fell silent. Ji Tianxing successfully controlled the situation and asked with a serious expression, "Who was the first to discover those dried corpses and the Red Shadow demon?" Many of the miners turned their heads to look at a middle-aged man with disheveled hair and a dirty face. This person lowered his head in fear and wanted nothing more than to drill into a crack in the rock and let Ji Tianxing ignore him. Ji Tianxing looked at him and asked, "What did the Red Shadow demon look like?" Chapter 1597. The middle-aged man lowered his head and pondered for a long time before carefully answering the question. "For more than a month, everyone has been spreading rumors that a Red Shadow demon has appeared in the North mining area. Some people said that the Red Shadow demon looked like a ferocious giant. Its entire body was dark red, and it was more than 3 feet tall. Some people also said that the Red Shadow demon was a phantom. Its appearance was like an evil spirit, and it was very fierce." Ji Tianxing frowned and said in a deep voice, "Don't talk nonsense. Just tell me what the Red Shadow demon looked like." The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment before stammering, "Overseer, if this commoner tells the truth, please don't blame me. The Red Shadow demon that this commoner saw was different from the rumors. I vaguely saw that it was a dark red bloodlight, like a pool of blood flowing on the ground. It also looked like a dark red veil." Before he could finish, the miners around him frowned and refuted him with strange expressions. "What nonsense is this guy talking about? What bloodlight, blood, and veil?" It was clearly a tall Red Shadow demon that looked like an evil spirit. So many people saw it with their own eyes. Isn't it enough to believe him? I think this guy must have been scared out of his wits. He didn't see anything clearly and even had hallucinations. The criticism of the miners made the middle-aged man's expression turn ugly. He lowered his head uneasily. Ji Tianxing knew what was going on. He nodded slightly and said, "Very good. You are worthy of a reward for telling the truth." With that, a light flashed in his palm. A few spirit stones and a primordial soul-level elixir appeared. "This is for you." He waved his hand and sent the spirit stones and elixir to the middle-aged man with a dazzling light. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment. Then he was pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly took the spirit stones and elixir and knelt down to thank him. "Thank you for your reward, Overseer." The other miners around him showed envy and jealousy when they saw this scene. They whispered to each other. Unknowingly, the panic of the crowd dissipated. They trusted and respected Ji Tianxing more. He then ordered everyone to return to work in the mine. Everyone only hesitated for a moment before returning to the mine. Wu Su, Zheng Rong, and Bai Kaixian silently watched all of this. They were filled with admiration for Ji Tianxing and gave him a thumbs up. Not long after, a new day arrived. More than 200 miners threw themselves into the work of mining the ore vein. Ji Tianxing took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to Commander Ding, reporting the matter of the Red Shadow Fiend. Not long after, Commander Ding led a team of silver armor guards and rushed to the number 59 mine cave in a hurry. As soon as the two sides met, Commander Ding anxiously asked, "When did the Red Shadow demons appear? How many people died? Did you leak any information?" Ji Tianxing naturally understood what he was worried about. He calmly said, "This morning, the Red Shadow demon broke into the mine and silently killed 39 miners. At present, only the 4 of us supervisors and the miners present know about this." Commander Ding immediately let out a sigh of relief. He nodded and said, "It's good that the information wasn't leaked. You all did well. You must keep your mouth shut and not leak any information. Otherwise," without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianxing cast a sidelong glance at him and asked, "Commander Ding, there were originally over 1,000 miners in the number 59 mine, but now there are only 200 people left. Those 700 people were all killed by the Red Shadow Fiend in the past month, right?" Commander Ding's body stiffened. His expression became extremely unnatural, and his gaze was somewhat evasive. However, he immediately recovered and said with a dignified expression, "I deeply regret that something like this happened to the 4 of you on your first day in the mine. However, you have to tell me, who leaked this secret? Those damn slaves actually dared to disobey my orders." Ji Tianxing couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He directly said, "Commander Ding, you don't need to hide anything. I've already investigated the truth of the matter. However, don't worry, we won't run away, and we definitely won't let the miners leave the mine." Commander Ding was stunned for a moment and looked deeply at him. Obviously, he didn't believe that he actually had such courage. If it were him, he also wouldn't stay in the number 59 mine for a long time. He was also very afraid of the Red Shadow Fiend. However, when he looked at the situation in the mine and saw that the miners' emotions were stable and they were mining the vein, he believed Ji Tianxing's words. "Well, you're called Kalan, right? You're very brave and also very capable. You actually managed to pacify these slaves. I think very highly of you." Although he said this, he secretly sneered in his heart. The ignorant are really fearless. This kid is new here and doesn't know the horror of the Red Shadow Fiend. He actually dares to boast shamelessly. I want to see how many days he can last. Fine, I'll pacify him first and let him continue to work here." Ji Tianxing didn't bother with pleasantries and said expressionlessly, "Commander Ding, after the tragedy last night, the number of miners has decreased by more than 30. We can't complete our mission. In order to stabilize the miners' emotions, and for the sake of confidentiality, please make an exception and reduce our mission." This, Commander Ding suddenly hesitated. He squinted his eyes and looked at Ji Tianxing. He thought to himself, "This kid is really scheming. He actually used this matter to threaten me." However, in order to take the overall situation into consideration and not leak the news, he had to swallow his anger. After pretending to weigh the pros and cons for a moment, he nodded slightly and said, Kalan, I think highly of you, so I agreed to your unreasonable request. You have to know how to be grateful. How about this? Your mission will be reduced to 8,000 spirit stones and 80 gems a day. Tianxing said expressionlessly. At most, we can only mine 4,000 spirit stones and 40 gems a day. Hiss! Commander Ding sucked in a breath of cold air and stared at him with a cold light in his eyes. You're really ruthless. Just cut it in half. Tianxing said indifferently. This is already our limit. Commander Ding must be well aware of this and know how to choose. Commander Ding looked at him deeply, nodded, and said, Kalan, you dare to threaten this king. This king will remember you. Tianxing pretended not to understand and asked with a frown. So, Commander Ding agrees? Commander Ding snorted in annoyance. I can't make the decision on this matter. I still need to go back and ask the four protectors. Then I'll wait for the good news. Tianxing left these words and turned to leave. Commander Ding was so angry that his teeth itched, but he couldn't vent his anger. He could only suppress his anger and order the silver-armored guards. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and carry those dried corpses away. Chapter 1598. Inside the gloomy mine, many miners were mining the ore veins, and the mine was filled with the sound of ding-dong, ding-dong. Tianxing flew into the air and announced loudly, Everyone stop for a moment. I want to announce a piece of good news. The miners who were scattered in every corner stopped working and turned to look at him. Even Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and Bai Kaixian flew to his side and looked at him with anticipation. What good news? Could it be related to the Red Shadow, evil demon? Tianxing looked around and said solemnly, Commander Ding came over just now, and I had a discussion with him. After my persuasion, Commander Ding decided to lighten everyone's workload. From today onwards, we only need to mine 4,000 spirit stones and 40 gems every day, and we will be able to complete the task. Everyone was quiet, their eyes opened wide in disbelief as they stared blankly at Tianxing. After a long while, the miners regained their senses and immediately burst out into earth-shattering cheers. Oh my God, is this real? Did I hear wrongly? This is unbelievable. Our task was actually reduced. I have been mining here for 40 years, and this is the first time I have heard of such a thing. This is unbelievable. Those inhumane commanders actually agreed to reduce our task. That Commander Ding is a scoundrel who eats people without spitting out their bones. He would definitely not be so kind. It must be Sir Kalan's credit. Yes, this is the surprise that Sir Kalan obtained for us. Thank you, Sir Kalan. In a moment, the 200 over miners all knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Tianxing, expressing their heartfelt gratitude. Zheng Rong, Wu Su, and the other two also revealed looks of surprise and were full of admiration for Tianxing. Kalan, you are really too amazing. This is unbelievable. Commander Ding is so vicious and strict, and he actually agreed to your conditions. Kalan, tell us honestly, did you get hold of something that could be used against Commander Ding? Tianxing only smiled and sent the three of them away with a few words. After everyone celebrated for a while, they continued to work. This time, the miners were clearly in high spirits and full of energy. On the surface, the situation seemed to be developing in a good direction. However, Tianxing's expression was still solemn, and he was unable to relax. Although he was 100% sure that Commander Ding would definitely agree to his conditions, he was not sure. However, what he was worried about was not this matter, but the elusive Red Shadow Demon. He had a strong premonition that the Red Shadow Demon would appear again tonight. After all, there were more than 200 people in the mine. Last night, the Red Shadow Demon had only killed 39 miners, so it was definitely not satisfied. He hid in a corner of the mine. While mining, he secretly took out a few talismans and buried them in different places. Those talismans were a gift from Hong Changtian before he left. They were all tribulation-grade talismans. They were extremely powerful and had extraordinary effects. Soon, another day passed. It was late at night. The 200 or so miners had finally completed their mission and could rest and recuperate. Ji Tianxing divided the miners into 4 groups and arranged for them to rest in 4 fixed areas. At the same time, he, Zhengrong, and the other 2 each guarded an area. Everyone understood his good intentions. This was to protect the safety of the miners and prevent the Red Shadow Demon from attacking again. At first, many of the miners were still doubtful. They tossed and turned, not daring to fall asleep. However, they had worked for an entire day, and their bodies and minds were very tired. At 3 o'clock in the morning, many people could no longer hold on and fell asleep in a daze. Only a few people remained awake. Ji Tianxing, Zheng Rong, and the other 2 were full of vigilance. However, after 3 o'clock in the morning, dawn was about to arrive. The entire mine was still quiet, and no abnormalities appeared. Zheng Rong and the other 2 were secretly thinking that the Red Shadow Demon would probably not come. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, remained calm and waited patiently. Finally, dawn arrived. There was no change in the mine. It was as dark as usual. At this moment, wisps of blood aura spread out from a cluster of rocks in the northwest corner. Each wisp of blood aura was only as thick as a strand of hair. After entering the mine, they dissipated into the night sky. At least billions of wisps of blood aura silently entered the mine and swept towards the miners not far away in an invisible state. The invisible blood aura emitted a mysterious energy fluctuation and quietly enveloped more than 50 miners. Those who were recuperating immediately fell into a deep sleep and lost consciousness. The few who were still awake were also hypnotized by the mysterious energy and fell into a deep sleep. Even Bai Kai-Xian, who was guarding the miners, became drowsy and delirious. Then, the invisible blood aura quickly gathered and formed a dark red light. It was like a thin layer of red film that enveloped the miners. It seemed that the thin layer of blood aura was about to cover more than 50 miners. Everyone was about to die in their sleep and become dried corpses. However, at this moment, a talisman buried in the rocks suddenly exploded. Crackle! With a crisp sound, the talisman turned into hundreds of lightning arcs and exploded with a divine and violent power, fiercely striking the dark red light. Squeak! The blood aura was instantly shattered by the lightning. It let out a painful cry like a mouse. The Red Shadow Demon was shocked and quickly shrank back. Hundreds of fragments of blood aura quickly gathered together and wanted to reform into a blood aura. However, at this moment, Ji Tianxing, who had been waiting for a long time, flashed and rushed over. "I've been waiting for you for a long time," he shouted in a cold tone and instantly came close to the blood aura. He waved his hand and a sacred white light appeared. That was the power of the heaven-mending orb. It was mysterious and powerful and had an unbelievable effect against the demons and the blood god. Swoosh! The blinding white light immediately enveloped more than 100 fragments of blood aura. These fragments of blood aura were unable to resist and were directly purified by the sacred white light and disappeared on the spot. The remaining 200 fragments of blood aura had already condensed into a ball of red light that rippled like water. It clearly did not expect that there was an ambush in the mine that it could not sense. It also did not expect that Ji Tianxing could release a mysterious and powerful power and melt a third of its body. One mistake had caused its power to be greatly reduced, and its strength dropped by 30%. It felt threatened and did not dare to stay any longer. With a swoosh, it flew back to the northwest corner and burrowed into the rocks. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a cold light and murderous intent burst out of his body. "Since you're here, you still want to escape? Don't even think about it." Chapter 1599. There were a few tiny cracks in the rocks at the corner of the mine. The dark red light drilled into the ground and passed through one of the cracks, heading deep underground. Ji Tianxing also used the earth-burrowing secret art to follow the dark red light and travel quickly underground. Although the Glacier Divine Mine was sealed and guarded by many guards, it was very difficult for outsiders to sneak in. The entrance of the mine was protected by a large formation, but the mine was too large. It was at least tens of thousands of miles wide. It was impossible to set up a large formation. The dark red light most likely snuck in from underground. As long as it hid deep underground, it would be very difficult to find and could often cause trouble in the mine. Ji Tianxing understood this point and was unwilling to give up the chase. He chased after the blood light relentlessly. There were many cracks and holes underground. The terrain was very complicated. Both parties traveled underground at high speed and quickly left the northern mine. The bloodlight was very familiar with the underground situation. It could always find cracks and holes that were convenient for it to travel through. Ji Tianxing chased after it with all his might, but he was still unable to catch up to it. He could only follow behind the bloodlight and ensure that he was not shaken off. Unknowingly, for hours had passed. The two parties chased underground for 15,000 miles and had already left the Glacier Divine Mine. It was only then that the bloodlight drilled out of the ground and flew above the glacier. Ji Tianxing followed closely behind and began a chase in the Arctic abyss. The bloodlight constantly changed forms. Sometimes it turned into wings, sometimes it turned into a sharp shuttle, and sometimes it condensed into a giant blood-colored sword. However, it was still unable to shake off Ji Tianxing, who was flying on his sword. During the chase, the two parties flew past countless icebergs and canyons, awakening many giant beasts hidden in the glaciers. Those giant beasts were all tribulation grade. They occupied an area and were very powerful and domineering. The bloodlight did not dare to tangle with them. It had to take a detour every time to avoid the attacks of the giant beasts. After all, it was only at the second stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. About 4 hours later, both parties flew into an iceberg area. There were continuous mountain ranges and peaks in a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. Every mountain peak and range was covered in thick ice and snow. When the bloody light flew into a canyon between two mountains, it actually slowed down. Ji Tianxing immediately realized that there was a problem and vigilantly observed the entire canyon. As expected, when the blood-red light flew to the deepest part of the canyon, it stopped. It landed on a 1,000 feet tall ice mountain and condensed into a 1,000 feet tall giant demon. It stared at Ji Tianxing with a ferocious expression. "Brat, you actually dare to chase me all the way here. You really don't know life from death." The giant devil bared its bloody mouth and roared angrily in a low voice. Ji Tianxing stopped and stood in the air above the deep valley, facing the troll from 20 miles away. He looked around and sneered. "You actually stopped here. Could it be that the iceberg under your feet is your nest?" The giant devil sneered. "You're not that stupid. Since you've guessed the answer, why don't you surrender? Don't wait for us to make a move. When the time comes, we'll make you suffer a fate worse than death and lose your life in despair." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and sneered contemptuously. "Ha! I've killed at least 50 clones of the blood god. I've never seen anyone as arrogant and ignorant as you." "You." The giant devil's body shook and the sneer on its face froze. It asked in a surprised tone, "Who are you? You actually know about the clones of the blood god?" Ji Tianxing sneered again. "Ha ha! You actually can't guess my identity. It seems that the ancestor demon god didn't tell you some secrets after creating you. You actually know about the Lord Demon God?" The giant devil was even more shocked, and its eyes flashed with disbelief. It was only now that it understood that this human youth in front of it had a deeper understanding of the demon race than it did. Such an opponent was truly terrifying. It didn't dare to waste any more time and hurriedly used its divine sense to call for its companion hiding in the iceberg. "Frost Knight, come help me." Following the sound of its divine sense transmission, a dark red light lit up in a nest somewhere in the ice mountain. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the dark red light flew out of the nest and arrived in the sky above the iceberg. The bloodlight landed beside the giant devil and quickly condensed into an 8-armed giant that was hundreds of feet tall. It had 2 huge heads and 8 thick arms. Its entire body emitted a violent and bloodthirsty aura. Ha ha! Chungong, why are you getting weaker and weaker? You can't even kill this human kid and let him chase you all the way here? The clone of the blood god called Frost Knight looked at Ji Tianxing and couldn't help but show contempt and laugh at its companion Chungong. Chungong was not angry and said with a serious expression, "This kid is not simple. Not only can he chase us all the way here, but he also knows that we are the clones of the blood god under the Lord Demon God." Xuanyu was clearly stunned for a moment. She carefully observed Ji Tianxing a few times before withdrawing her scrutinizing gaze. Ha ha! It's really surprising that he can see through our identities. However, so what if he knows? With his primordial soul realm strength, there's no need for the two of us to do anything. Black Mountain can easily tear him apart. Its strength was the same as Chungong, reaching the second level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It didn't take a primordial soul realm martial artist like Ji Tianxing seriously at all. Chungong shook his head and said in a serious tone, "Frost Knight, don't underestimate him. He seems to have grasped some mysterious power that can restrain us." Frost Knight sneered disapprovingly. "Ha ha, we're the most special existences in the world. We have undying and indestructible bodies. Who can restrain us? If you're scared out of your wits, let Black Mountain attack first and chop him into pieces." After saying that, it opened its mouth and let out a few strange whistles. That sharp and ear-piercing sound reverberated intensely in the canyon. The originally calm canyon suddenly began to tremble. The ground trembled, and huge ravines split open on the snow-covered ground. The surrounding icebergs were also shaking violently, cracks appearing all over their surface. It was as if there was a huge monster sleeping in the depths of the canyon that was now awakened. Ji Tianxing knew at a glance that there was definitely a huge beast hiding in the canyon. He had seen similar scenes many times after entering the Arctic abyss. In the next instant, a huge hole opened up in the canyon below his feet. Endless icy blue flames suddenly spewed out of the hole and condensed into a few fire pillars that shot towards him. He calmly took a step back and teleported more than 10 miles away. Those icy blue fire pillars brushed past him and flew tens of thousands of feet into the sky before exploding. Bam! Bam! Amidst the deafening explosion, the pillar of fire exploded into icy blue fragments that covered the sky and the sun, scattering all over the place. Immediately after, a huge beast head the size of a house crawled out of the hole. Roar! Chapter 1600. On the head of this pitch-black giant beast, there was a pitch-black horn that emitted a sharp cold light. A pair of huge eyes, suffused with a strange red light, obviously had a bloodthirsty, demonic nature. It stared at Ji Tianxing in the sky, slowly stretched out two huge front claws, and crawled out of the hole in the glacier ground. Ji Tianxing looked down at the pitch-black giant beast. Seeing its scarlet eyes and black gas lingering around its body, he guessed that it had been demonized. He could roughly guess that this giant beast at the second level of the Crossing Calamity realm was originally entrenched here, quietly waiting for the heavenly tribulation to descend. However, the two blood gods' clones occupied this area and subdued the giant beast. They used a secret technique to demonize the giant beast, turning it into a fierce demonic beast to protect their nest. With a burst of cracking sounds, the pitch-black giant beast drilled out of the ground and stood in the glacier valley. It was a pitch-black giant beast with a body length of 100 feet with 6 legs. Its body was covered with cold, hard scales, and there was a pair of wide black wings on its back. Ji Tianxing was temporarily unable to distinguish what race and bloodline this giant beast was. He only knew that the two blood gods' clones tamed this giant beast and named it Black Mountain. The two blood gods' clones stood on the ice mountain, looking at Ji Tianxing from afar, revealing a cruel and sinister sneer. "Kid, no matter what means you have, you will definitely die today. Enjoy the pain and fear. If you meet us, you will definitely die without a burial place, turning into ashes." Ji Tianxing ignored them, glanced at the giant beast Black Mountain in the valley and slowly raised his right palm. A black light flashed in his palm, and a pitch-black, ancient, broken sword appeared. It was the Sword of Burial of Heaven. He opened the sword world and whispered, "Ji-bai, I let you rest in the sword world for so long. You must be bored, right?" As his voice fell, a light flashed in the sky in front of him. Swoosh! A figure wearing a black robe and holding a strange black blade appeared out of thin air in the sky. He was Ji-bai. When Ji Tianxing left Mount God Bestowment, he had brought him with him. In order to facilitate the operation and to keep it a secret, Ji Tianxing let him stay in the sword world to recuperate and only called him out when needed. Now, he finally had a place to use his skills. Master's order is Ji-bai's duty. There is no such thing as boredom. Ji-bai bowed towards Ji Tianxing, his expression calm as he spoke. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and pointed at the giant beast Black Mountain in the canyon. "Ji-bai, I'll leave that giant beast to you. I'll personally deal with the 2 blood gods." Ji-bai glanced at the giant beast Heishan, not putting it in his eyes at all. When he saw the 2 blood gods on the ice mountain in the distance, he frowned and said coldly, "2 more demons. Master, please let me deal with them." He had helped Ji Tianxing kill a blood god before, so he knew how difficult and terrifying it was. In comparison, the giant beast Black Mountain was not much of a threat. Therefore, he had to take the initiative to deal with the 2 blood gods to prevent Ji Tianxing from being in danger. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said solemnly, "The blood gods are not easy to deal with. Only I can restrain them. You just have to follow my orders." After saying that, his figure flashed and flew across the sky, rushing towards the 2 blood gods on the ice mountain. He had just flown 3,000 meters away when the giant Black Mountain in the canyon roared and rushed into the sky, pouncing towards him. Seeing this, Ji-bai did not hesitate to take out his black blade. Swish, swish, swish. He slashed out dozens of bright blade lights, blocking the giant beast Black Mountain. The powerful blazing white blade light fiercely slashed the giant beast Black Mountain, causing it to fly back and smash into the canyon. With a loud boom, a huge pit was formed on the canyon floor, splashing dust and ice into the air. The giant beast Black Mountain had just climbed out of the pit when Ji-bai rushed over and slashed with his blade as fast as lightning. Swish, swish, swish. One after another, huge blade lights lit up like white silk across the sky, covering the sky. The giant beast Black Mountain was blocked by the blade lights and could not rush out. It could only give up on chasing Ji Tianxing and attack with all its strength, fighting with Ji-bai in the canyon. At the same time, Ji Tianxing rushed to the top of the ice mountain, only 1,000 feet away from the 2 blood gods. His momentum rose to the peak. Using all of his strength, he waved the Burial of Heaven and launched an attack. Broken Moon Sword. Against the blood gods in the second layer of the Tribulation Realm, ordinary secret techniques were useless. As soon as he attacked, he used all of his strength and used his strongest killing move. The Burial of Heaven slashed out a 1,000 feet long dark golden sword, with the power to destroy everything, slashing towards the 2 blood gods. The 2 blood gods' illusions frowned, and their eyes became serious. "Damn it, this kid also has helpers. This little bastard only has the strength of the primordial soul realm. How can he use such a powerful sword technique?" As they spoke, the 2 of them spread out tacitly and teleported into the sky. The giant golden sword struck Chung Gong with a loud bang. Boom! Chung Gong was injured by Ji Tianxing before, and 30% of its strength was devoured by the heaven-mending orb. Its reaction was a little slow, so it was hit by the golden sword, and its entire left arm was cut off. Ji Tianxing was about to release the power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the left arm condensed by the bloodlight. But at this moment, Frost Knight, who had dodged the attack, rushed over from the right. "Kid, die!" Frost Knight shouted angrily, holding a giant axe condensed by demonic chi in both hands, and slashed down fiercely. Ji Tianxing did not dare to be negligent, and could only wave his sword to block the attack of the giant axe. Ask the heavens with the horizontal sword. The Heaven Burier sword released a dazzling golden sword, which blocked the sky above his head. The pitch-black heaven-splitting axe fiercely slammed into the huge golden sword, causing a loud boom sound to ring out. The golden sword shattered on the spot, and Ji Tianxing was also sent flying, crashing into the valley below. Frost Knight was not injured at all, and with both hands holding the giant axe, it chased after him with murderous intent and slashed again. Ji Tianxing hurriedly took out the Kenshin battle robe, condensing a pair of golden wings to protect himself. Bam! The giant axe hit him again, but it was blocked by the golden wings. Amidst the deafening noise, he crashed into the valley, creating a huge crater in the glacier ground, and snow and gravel splashed everywhere. When he crawled out of the crater, Chang'an had also reattached its broken arm and joined forces with Frost Knight to attack him. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to take out the golden sword and use his secret technique to fight fiercely with the two blood gods. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky, and both used all their strength, using all kinds of powerful ultimate skills. Deafening collisions and explosions continued to ring out, echoing through the mountains and the sky. Chapter 1601. Soon, a quarter of an hour had passed. Ji Bai and the giant beast Heishan had already fought for thousands of moves in the canyon. Both of them had the strength of the second layer of the Crossing Calamity Realm. The power of the spells they cast was extremely powerful, and the destructive power was astonishing. The Glacier Canyon, with a radius of 100 miles, was destroyed by their fierce battle. The ground was covered with numerous gullies and pits, and there were huge chunks of ice and gravel everywhere. The ice mountains around the canyon were also smashed into pieces by them, collapsing into a pile of rubble. Ji Bai's fighting strength was far beyond his realm. Especially his blade technique, it was godly, reaching the level of flowing light like lightning, extremely fast. The ravines and fissures on the ground were basically caused by his saber light. The giant beast Heishan's body was huge, but its strength was violent, and its defense was strong. But in front of Ji Bai, it was too cumbersome. Most of the time, it was passively beaten by Ji Bai, retreating step by step. Until now, it had already suffered thousands of blades. No matter how hard the scales on its body were, it could not block Ji Bai's lightning-fast blade. Its huge mountain-like body was covered with hideous wounds, deep to the bone, and blood was flowing. There were also two huge wounds that almost cut off its neck. 2 of its 6 legs were also cut off, and its injuries were extremely serious. However, such a heavy injury did not make it afraid. Instead, it aroused its ferocious nature. It fell into a berserk state, desperately counterattacking, releasing ice-blue flames that could destroy heaven and earth, wanting to burn Ji Bai into ashes. Ji Bai was as calm and collected as ever, without the slightest hint of anxiety. Other than his messy hair and some superficial wounds, he was fine, and his breathing was still stable. Seeing the giant beast Heishan spit out ice flames, his eyes flashed with a cold light. "Big Dipper, holy slash!" he shouted in a cold tone, and his figure suddenly became illusory, bursting with an extremely fierce aura. Swish, swish, swish. At that moment, his figure crazily split, and 36 shadows appeared in the air. Each shadow held a blade with both hands, and slashed at the giant beast Heishan. 36 rays of light that were as bright as stars, with terrifying power, appeared in the sky. In the next instant, when the overwhelming ice-blue flames descended, his figure disappeared. There were only 36 dazzling saber lights left in the sky. They broke through the ice-blue flames at the speed of light and hit the giant black mountain beast. Bang, 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 bang. A series of muffled explosions resounded through the clouds and shook the surrounding 300 miles. The giant black mountain beast's body, which was riddled with scars, was finally unable to bear the burden and was hacked into pieces by the saber light. Hundreds of pieces of flesh and blood splattered in all directions. The black blood that covered the sky and covered the earth was like a heavy downpour that sprinkled down from the sky. Only then did the 36 dazzling saber lights gather together and form a figure. This figure was Jibai. He stood in the sky, holding the black treasured saber in his hand, looking at the ravine that had already turned into ruins. Pieces of flesh and black blood were scattered all over the ruins, mixing with the rocks and ice. It was a ghastly sight. So, a ball of icy blue light rushed out of the ruins and fled in a panic. It was the primordial spirit of the giant black mountain beast. Jibai originally wanted to destroy its primordial spirit and kill it completely. However, he turned his head and looked at the distant sky. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was still fighting with the two blood gods' illusions, he suppressed the killing intent in his heart and turned around to fly towards Ji Tianxing. To him, killing a giant beast was nothing. It was far less important than protecting Ji Tianxing. After 2 breaths, he flew 100 miles away and arrived at Ji Tianxing's side. At this time, the battle between Ji Tianxing and the two blood gods' illusions had also come to an end. The two blood gods' illusions had turned into a 1,000 feet long, blood-colored giant blade. They attacked Ji Tianxing from left and right. On the surface, it seemed that they were not injured and their attacks were very fierce. They seemed to have the upper hand. But in reality, their bodies had been destroyed more than 10 times and their strength had decreased by about 40%. At most, in 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianxing could destroy them and use the heaven-mending orb to devour them. After Jibai arrived, he quietly rushed to the vicinity of one of the blood blades. This blood blade was formed by Shuang Yi, and it was slashing towards Ji Tianxing with all its strength. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jibai suddenly launched an attack. He swung his blade as fast as lightning. Fallen heaven continuous slash. Swish, 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 swish. In that instant, 9 snow-white blade lights appeared. Like lightning tearing through the sky, they ruthlessly slashed at Shuang Yi. But this was not the end. One after another, snow-white blade lights appeared. The power increased layer by layer, each blade faster than the previous one, slashing towards Shuang Yi. Clang, 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 clang. A series of collision sounds burst out. It was actually like the sound of metal clashing. The blood blade formed by Shuang Yi was continuously slashed 49 times in a short 2 breaths. After suffering such a heavy blow, it could no longer hold on, and the blood blade collapsed on the spot. However, the blood fragments that covered the sky immediately condensed into a blood-colored giant, angrily staring at Jibai. "Damn bastard, you dare to sneak attack me? You're courting death." Shuang Yi angrily cursed. He madly used a demonic path secret technique, releasing a sky full of bloodlight toward Jibai. Jibai hurriedly teleported to dodge and swung his blade to block Shuang Yi's attack. Both sides were entangled in the sky and engaged in an intense battle. Seeing this scene, Cheng Gong was filled with worry. He hurriedly attacked Jibai to help Shuang Yi. However, Ji Tianxing was already prepared and immediately used his ultimate move. White Tiger Sacred Sword. His body ignited with golden flames as his body fused with the golden primordial spirit sword. The Burial of Heaven sword also expanded to 1,000 feet tall and fused with the golden sword. Immediately, the golden primordial spirit sword's power increased by 4 times as it ruthlessly slashed towards Cheng Gong. Cheng Gong had a bad premonition and immediately wanted to teleport away. However, his vitality was already greatly damaged and his aura was locked by the golden sword. He was suppressed to the point that he could not move. How could he escape? Bang! With a muffled sound, he was slashed by the golden primordial spirit sword and shattered into pieces. Tens of thousands of blood fragments hurriedly retreated into the distance and quickly gathered together, wanting to reform his body. However, at this moment, the golden primordial spirit sword released a mysterious white light. Like a huge net that covered the sky, it covered the blood fragments. Swoosh! Countless blood fragments were enveloped by the mysterious white light. The white light contained a divine power that quickly purified the blood fragments and devoured them. In just a few breaths of time, all the blood fragments were devoured and disappeared without a trace. Blood god's son Changong was killed and turned into nourishment for the heaven-mending orb. The golden primordial spirit sword immediately turned around and flew towards Ji Bai and Shuang Yi. At this moment, Ji Bai and Shuang Yi were fighting in the sky dozens of miles away. Ji Bai's blade technique and strength were slightly better than Shuang Yi and had the upper hand. Chapter 1602. Ji Bai had long known the characteristics of the blood god's son, which was almost immortal. Therefore, he did not expect to be able to kill Frost Knight. He only wanted to entangle Frost Knight and weaken its strength as much as possible. When Ji Tianxing arrived at the battlefield, Frost Knight had just been forced back by Ji Bai's several sword lights. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to attack. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. At this time, he maintained the state of fusion with the golden sword and burial of heaven. The 1,000 feet long golden sword ignited with bright golden flames, condensing into a mountain-like vermilion bird phantom. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. Boom! Frost Knight did not have time to dodge and was slashed by the golden sword. With a loud explosion, it was shattered into dozens of pieces on the spot by the giant sword. The dark red blood light fragments scattered in all directions, but they quickly gathered together. Ji Tianxing did not give it a chance to reform its body. Without hesitation, he scattered the sacred white light towards the blood light fragments. Swoosh! At least 30 blood light fragments were enveloped by the sacred white light. The demonic qi and evil power contained in the fragments were quickly purified by the white light. The remaining pure power was also quickly devoured by the heaven-mending orb. However, there were still dozens of blood light fragments that escaped the sacred white light. They had already gathered together to form a giant crimson sword that was over 100 feet in length. Swoosh! The bloodlight sword did not dare to stay. Without hesitation, it turned and flew away, escaping towards the ice mountain not far away. The ice mountain was at the end of the canyon, where Frost Knight and Changong's nest were. Previously, when Ji Bai fought with the black mountain giant beast, the aftermath of the battle was not able to destroy the ice mountain. After all, the ice mountain was protected by a powerful array. Don't even think about escaping. Seeing that Frost Knight still wanted to escape back to its nest, Ji Bai's tone was cold and angry. He waved his sword, creating a sky full of sword lights, blocking its front. Frost Knight had 70% of its power devoured by the heaven-mending orb, and was already exhausted. It was unable to dodge Ji Bai's sword light. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds burst out, and it was once again cut into dozens of pieces, scattering in the sky. Before it could reform its body, Ji Tianxing had already arrived. Shwan! Another wave of holy white light shone down, enveloping all of the fragments. This time, Frost Knight had nowhere to run. The dozens of bloody light fragments were quickly purified by the holy white light, and were quickly devoured. Seeing that the battle was over, Ji Bai heaved a sigh of relief. He was about to withdraw his saber and fly back to Ji Tianxing's side. But at this moment, a black shadow suddenly flew out from the ice mountain 100 miles away. Swish! The black shadow flew into the sky and immediately disappeared. In the next instant, when it appeared again, it was already behind Ji Bai, less than 300 meters away. The black shadow released a wave of black qi, which condensed into a millstone-sized palm, which silently slapped toward Ji Bai. Ji Bai suddenly realized that something was wrong. His face changed, and the nerves in his body tensed up. A strong sense of danger made him feel as if there was a thorn in his back. He subconsciously teleported away, but it was already too late. Boom! With a muffled sound, he was hit by the mysterious black palm. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot and flew 10 miles away. At the same time, Ji Tianxing had just finished off Frost Knight and controlled the heaven-mending orb to finish devouring it. Swish! With a flash of brilliance, he removed the fusion state with the golden sword and returned to his original appearance. The Burial of Heaven sword also returned to its original state and was held in his hand. Only the 1,000-meter-tall, primordial spirit golden sword was still floating in the sky behind him. He looked at the black shadow with a gloomy face and sized it up with a sharp gaze. He saw that a small figure was wrapped in a dense black chi. It was a 1-meter-tall child wearing pitch-black leather armor. His arms and legs were exposed to the air. At a glance, his skin was as dark as charcoal, and his body was covered with fine black hair. His face was also very ugly and ferocious, not like a normal person. He had a huge bald head with a dark red mysterious pattern engraved on it. It was a distorted face with 2 dark green eyeballs embedded in it. Under his collapsed nose was a large, flat mouth that resembled a toad's. His mouth could not close, revealing 2 sharp fangs, and black saliva continuously dripped from the corners of his mouth. Such an ugly and ferocious face was unforgettable. The most eye-catching thing was that his neck, arms, and legs were covered with evil spirit patterns and patterns. His 4 limbs were short and thick, and he had a ferocious appearance. His entire body emitted an icy aura of death. When Ji Tianqing saw his appearance, he frowned fiercely, and his eyes flickered with suspicion. This little monster doesn't look like a human at all. Is he a demon? But the demons on the profound sky continent don't look like that. They're all tall giants. Also, I've looked through the history books of the Shenwu continent, but I haven't seen any records of the demons. There are no demons on this continent. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the ugly child covered in ghostly tattoos opened his mouth and spoke. "This is unbelievable. You damned worm, you actually chased me all the way here and killed 2 of my blood gods." The blood god Scions were immortal and indestructible, so it was impossible for them to be completely killed. "Little worm, what secret technique did you use to kill Qinggong and Shuangyi?" The ghostly child spoke in the common language of the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianqing stared at him expressionlessly and asked, "Who are you? How are you related to the ancestral demon god? If you answer my question, I'll tell you the answer you want to know." The ghostly child sneered and looked at him playfully for a moment. Then, he said in a low voice, "There's no harm in telling you. I'm Ghost Child, one of the 36 demon monarchs. As for the ancestral demon god, he's the ancestor and leader of my clan." 36 demon monarchs? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought to himself, Ghost Child is stronger than Ji Bai. He's at least at the 3rd or 4th level of Tribulation Realm. The ancestral demon god has only escaped to the Shenwu continent for half a year, but he's already recruited 36 such powerful demon monarchs. He simply could not believe that the ancestral demon god had such powerful methods and abilities. Previously, he had been planning to take advantage of the fact that the ancestral demon god had yet to recover his strength to quickly find him and completely eliminate him. Now, it seemed that his plan was destined to fail, and it was impossible to realize it. However, Ghost Child's words had confirmed one thing. Ghost Child was indeed a demon, but he was not a demon from the profound sky continent. Instead, he was a demon from the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianqing did not understand why there were demons on the Shenwu continent, but why were there no records of them in the history books? However, now was not the time to consider this question. He had to think of a way to deal with Ghost Child. "Little worm, it's time for you to answer my question. If you answer me truthfully, I may leave you with an intact corpse. Otherwise, you and your companions will become my dinner." Chapter 1603. Ghost Child's tone was cruel and bloodthirsty. His entire body was emitting an invisible pressure, quietly enveloping Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing secretly channeled his energy to resist the invasion of the demonic aura. On the surface, he casually replied, "To me, the blood god's sons are not immortal. They're just a little difficult to deal with. After all, I am the nemesis of the demonic race. Even if it is the ancestor demon god, I can easily kill him." With these words, Ghost Child's expression suddenly changed. His dark green eyes emitted a strong, murderous intent. You are Ji Tianqing, the guy who came here from the other continent. Ghost Child's expression and tone were filled with shock. He obviously could not believe it. Ji Tianxing heard the knack and sneered. Looks like you already know. After the ancestor demon god was defeated, he fled here in a sorry state. Ghost Child quickly woke up from his shock. His eyes emitted a bright brilliance, and he grinned. I can wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. I didn't expect you to be Ji Tianxing. You actually delivered yourself to my doorstep. As early as a few months ago, Lord Demon God issued an order for all the demon monarchs and blood god sons to search for a human boy called Ji Tianxing. Whoever can capture you will be able to obtain the most generous reward, the ancient demonic inheritance. Ghost Child could not hold back the excitement in his heart. He raised his head and laughed loudly. Haha, this monarch's luck is really too good. You actually came uninvited, walking right into the trap. This monarch has decided to spare your little life. I will capture you and present you to Lord Demon God. Little brat, cripple your own martial arts and surrender without a fight. Don't make this monarch take action. You can't bear the consequences. At this time, Jibai had already channeled his energy to suppress his injuries and flew from afar to Ji Tianxing's side. He stared at Ghost Child solemnly and secretly transmitted his voice to Ji Tianxing. Master, this monster's strength is very strong. We are not his opponent. Quickly retreat. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly to show that he understood. Of course we have to withdraw, but it's a little troublesome. Jibai said without hesitation. Master, don't worry. I will hold him back. You need to run back. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said solemnly, No, we have to advance and retreat together. Only then will there be hope. After saying that, his entire body exploded with a soaring fighting spirit. Using all of his power, he controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to slash at Ghost Child. Soul Slayer. The 1,000-foot-long Yuan spirit golden sword exploded with destructive power. It tore through the dark sky and arrived in front of Ghost Child. Chapter 1604. Before the divine lightning pillar arrived, Ghost Child had already prepared his defense. He used a demonic past secret technique to form an oval-shaped blood shield to protect himself. It was still the demonic blood shield. The moment the blood shield formed, the divine lightning pillar fiercely struck him, enveloping him and the blood shield. Kaboom! A deafening sound of thunder burst out, resounding through the sky, shaking the mountains and the earth. In that moment, the demonic blood shield flashed with bloodlight, and countless cracks appeared. The divine lightning pillar also collapsed, turning into millions of purple lightning arcs, covering the sky within 100 miles. The demonic blood shield shattered. The dense purple lightning arcs enveloped Ghost Child, causing his body to tremble, and he let out an angry roar. At the same time, Ji Tianxing pulled the injured Ji Bai and flew dozens of miles away as fast as lightning. Although the divine lightning pillar destroyed the demonic blood shield and achieved a certain effect, causing Ghost Child quite a bit of trouble. But Ji Tianxing knew that with just this divine lightning pillar, it was impossible to heavily injure Ghost Child. He had used up all his trump cards, but Ghost Child had not used his true trump card. If he did not take the opportunity to escape now, when would he? He took out a white talisman from his space ring and activated it without hesitation. The talisman ignited with golden flames and instantly turned into a ball of dense white light, emitting a powerful spatial energy fluctuation. In the universal treasure box that Hong Qingtan gave him, there were more than 30 talismans with extraordinary effects. This white talisman was one of them, called the Great Shift Talisman. It could instantly shift 10,000 miles. It was very magical. In the next moment, the ball of dense white light spread out and condensed into an oval-shaped door of light in the sky. Obviously, this was a teleportation door. Ji Tianxing brought Ji Bai and stepped into the teleportation door of light. Whoosh! After the two stepped into the teleportation door, Their figures disappeared in a flash, and the white door of light also disappeared into thin air. At the same time, the purple lightning arcs that covered 100 miles in the sky gradually faded. Ghost Child also broke through the blockade of the lightning arcs and flew high into the sky. The surrounding lightning arcs became weaker and weaker and could no longer pose a threat to him. Black smoke was rising from his body, and he was panting heavily. His head, neck, arms, and legs were all covered in charred scars, which were still bleeding profusely. They were all struck by divine lightning. Even though he had only suffered some minor injuries, it did not affect his ability to fight. However, the fact that he was in such a sorry state was a great humiliation to him. Damn Ji Tianxing. This monarch will tear you to shreds. He cursed angrily. His eyes flashed with a dark red light as he searched for Ji Tianxing. However, the surrounding sky was completely empty. Puzzled, he released his formless divine sense to cover an area of 500 miles, carefully inspecting every inch of the sky and earth. The result was the same. There was no one in the area. Where's Ji Tianxing and that bastard? Could it be that he had already escaped? This was impossible. In just a few breaths of time, with their strength, it's absolutely impossible for them to escape more than 500 miles away. Ghost Child furrowed his brows. He was filled with doubt and indignation. He then searched the area within 500 kilometers a few more times. Without a doubt, the results were all in vain. In the end, he had no choice but to accept reality. Ji Tianxing and Ji Bai had escaped from under his nose. Moreover, they had escaped in a baffling manner. No one knew. Originally, he was determined to capture Ji Tianxing. He would definitely be able to capture Ji Tianxing and offer him to the ancestral devil god for a reward. But now, the duck in his hand had flown away. He was so furious that he almost vomited blood. Thousands of miles away from Ghost Child, on top of an ice mountain. Swoosh! Suddenly, a white light flashed in the sky. Two tall figures appeared out of thin air. These two people were Ji Tianxing and Ji Bai. Ji Tianxing turned his head to look at the sky behind him. Seeing that the horizon was very calm, there was nothing unusual. Only then did he relax. Ji Bai remained vigilant at all times. He calmly looked around and asked, "Master, where is this?" Ji Tianxing subconsciously replied, "Of course we are still in the Arctic abyss, but we are thousands of miles away from Ghost Child. Don't worry, he definitely won't be able to find us. It's also impossible for him to chase after us." Ji Bai's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. After thinking for a while, he understood. "Master, you used the Great Shift Talisman, and you know about it too?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. Ji Bai calmly said, "Your subordinate's master can also refine the Great Shift Talisman. However, the time required to refine this talisman is too long, and the materials used are too precious. Even if the talisman was refined, it would be gone after one use. Therefore, my master only refined a few and was usually reluctant to use them. I didn't expect that master would also have the Great Shift Talisman and use it so casually." Ji Tianxing was startled. He only smiled and did not say anything. But he secretly thought, "Elder Hong gave me so many treasures, pills and talismans in the Chinkan treasure box. This Great Shift Talisman is only one of them, and it is already so precious. It seems that the gift that Elder Hong gave me is really a priceless treasure." After collecting his thoughts, he said to Ji Bai, "Ji Bai, we are already out of danger. I have to rush back to the Glacier God Mine and take care of some things. You're also injured. Go back to the Sword World to heal." After saying that, he opened the entrance to the Sword World. "Master, please take care. If you need anything, just give the order." Ji Bai cupped his hands and bowed to him before entering the Sword World. After Ji Tianxing put away the Burial of Heaven's sword, he quickly flew across the sky and returned to the Glacier God Mine. On the way back, he silently thought, the tragedy in the Glacier God Mine was caused by two Blood God sons. Now that I have killed two Blood God sons, there shouldn't be any more problems in the future. Although Ghost Child is also a demon, he is not a Blood God son. It is impossible for him to go to the mine and create a tragedy to increase his strength. The truth of the tragedy had been found, and the culprit had been dealt with. There was no point in him continuing to stay in the Glacier God Mine. It would only be a waste of time. Calculating the time, it is almost time for the God Light to descend. I have to quickly return to Seal God Mountain and wait for the God Light to descend. After a few hours, Ji Tianxing returned to the Glacier God Mine. He did not sneak into the northern mining area. Instead, he concealed himself and found his way to the entrance of the God Mine. He hid outside the defensive array and secretly observed for a while. After the patrolling guards left, he took out the unconscious Kulan from the sword world and threw her near the defensive array. Not long after, another group of patrolling guards passed by and found the unconscious Kulan. Everyone went forward to check on the situation and quickly brought Kulan into the God Mine. Ji Tianxing hid in the dark. After seeing this scene, he felt relieved and turned to leave. Previously, he acted in the God Mine using Kulan's identity. Now that he was leaving, of course, he had to send Kulan back. Chapter 1605. After leaving the Glacier God Mine, Ji Tianxing rode on his sword and sped through the sky. His return journey was quite smooth, and there were no mishaps along the way. Even if there were some giant beasts hiding in the Arctic abyss that attacked him when he passed by, he was able to avoid them. After leaving the Arctic abyss, there was no more danger. As he hurried back, he thought about his future plans. He had originally planned to investigate the whereabouts of the Blood God and the Primordial Demon God through the tragedy in the Glacier God Mine. If he could find the Primordial Demon God, he would kill him at all costs. However, he had not expected that the Shinwu continent would also have such a powerful demon force. The two blood gods that he had killed were only small fries under the Primordial Demon God. The true powerhouses and main forces were the 36 demon sovereigns, including Ghostchild. With his current strength, he could not even defeat Ghostchild, let alone kill the Primordial Demon God. This plan could only be put aside for the time being, and he would consider it again when he was stronger. Thus, he could only leave the Glacier God Mine and return to Mount God Seal as soon as possible. What he needed to do next was to increase his strength as soon as possible. He needed to prepare for the God-Disciple test in 10 days and prepare for the 3 Divine Kingdoms exchange. After he met Yin Yao and reunited with Yin Yao, he would consider other matters. Unknowingly, 6 days passed. On the night of the 6th day, he returned to Mount God Seal covered in dust. Fortunately, he had returned in time. Tomorrow was the day when the divine light would descend. Ji Tianxing quietly returned to Mount God Seal without alerting anyone else. When he returned to the eastern courtyard of Heaven's Saint Palace, it was already late at night, and everything was silent. He was mentally exhausted. After entering the secret room, he took a pill and sat down to meditate. The night passed quickly. By daybreak, his magic power had mostly recovered, and his mental state was much better. When the sun rose, he ended his cultivation. After changing into a clean set of clothes, he left the secret room and rushed to the sacred altar in the middle of Heaven's Saint Palace. Half an hour later, he arrived at the sacred altar. It had been 3 months since he had last come to the sacred altar. The sacred altar looked the same as before, and it had not changed at all. The warm morning sun shone on the sacred altar, causing it to shine with a dazzling golden light. Around the holy altar, there were more than 30 statues of mythical beasts. They formed a circle around the holy altar as if they were guards. He stepped onto the giant stone steps and climbed to the top of the altar. Not long after, he crossed the 99 steps and arrived at the top of the holy altar. On the 10-jong-wide platform, the ground was dark gold in color and carved with mysterious patterns. 2 divine dragons were circling around it. He sat on the ground with a calm expression, closed his eyes, and meditated, waiting patiently. Today was the day when the divine light descended. However, it was only a possibility. It might not really happen. He didn't have much hope. Not long after, light footsteps could be heard from below the altar. Ji Tianxing heard the sound and guessed the identity of the person. He opened his eyes and looked down. Sure enough, as he expected, A white-haired old man in a white robe had just walked to the bottom of the holy altar and was looking up at him. Elder Hong. He smiled and greeted the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man was Hong Qingtian. He also looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile and nodded slightly. I'm here to take a look. You are still so early. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Elder Hong, come up and talk. No need. Hong Qingtian shook his head and said, My injuries have already healed, and my strength is slowly recovering. There's no need to devour the divine light anymore. You can continue with your cultivation. I'll just watch from here. Ji Tianxing didn't insist. He asked with concern, Elder Hong, have you collected enough outer space Xian Bing and earth core fire crystal? Hong Qingtian raised his eyebrows and said with a bitter smile, These two materials are precious treasures that can only be found by chance. How can it be gathered so quickly? However, don't worry. I predict that I'll be able to collect them before you participate in the kingdom exchange. Ji Tianxing was stunned. He smiled and said, Elder Hong, are you so sure that I can participate in the kingdom exchange? Hong Qingtian stroked his beard and said with a benevolent smile, Of course. Disciples who can obtain the top 5 in the God Disciple assessment are qualified to participate in the exchange. 3 months ago, you've already defeated the 4th-ranked genius, and you're ranked 4th. Now that 3 months have passed, your strength is even stronger than before. You'll definitely be ranked in the top 3. Ji Tianxing didn't try to be modest. He just smiled and nodded. He was the Son of God. No matter what kind of miracle he created, it wasn't rare. If he was modest on purpose, it would seem hypocritical. After a moment of silence, Hong Qingtian stopped smiling and said earnestly, Actually, what I'm looking forward to the most is that you can obtain the 1st place in the assessment and become the number 1 genius. Only then will you be worthy of the identity of the Son of God and become the most valued God disciple of the Clear Sky Pagoda. At that time, not only will you be able to comprehend the Divine Master's secret technique, you'll also receive the most generous reward. Ji Tianxing also knew that Mount God would recruit a batch of God disciples every 20 years. Most of them would be mediocre even if they became God disciples. Only the number 1 God disciple had the most potential and could achieve great things in the future. He nodded calmly and said with a smile, Since Elder Hong has such high expectations of me, how can I let you down? 10 days later, I'll come back with the 1st place. Hong Qingtian was stunned for a moment. Then he revealed a gratified smile. Hee, you're really confident, but I'll support you. The two of them chatted and laughed. After an hour, the originally calm sky suddenly surged with wind and clouds. In the distant sky, a sea of white clouds was blown away by an invisible hurricane and rolled into a huge whirlpool. It was a whirlpool with a radius of 10,000 miles, facing Mount God. Around the whirlpool, the sky became dark. Even the golden sun became dim. The sudden change stunned Hong Qingtian for a moment, and then he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He stroked his white beard and said with a gratified face, Tianxing, your time has come. The divine light is about to descend. You have to concentrate on refining the divine light without any distractions. I'll protect you. Ji Tianxing looked up at the sky. When he saw the changes in the sky, he revealed a look of anticipation. Great! The divine light has finally descended. If I can refine the divine light before the God Disciple assessment, my strength will definitely rise to another level. After muttering to himself, he quickly sat cross-legged on the holy altar. He put his palms together in front of his chest and silently cultivated. The changes in the sky lasted for 100 breaths before finally stabilizing. Then, the huge whirlpool formed by the wind and clouds lit up with a dazzling 7-colored brilliance. It poured down like a flood. Chapter 1606. The mighty rainbow divine light poured down like a waterfall from the 9 heavens. In that instant, the entire sky above Godseal Mountain was enveloped by the rainbow divine light, making it dazzling and brilliant. The divine light contained boundless spirit chi as it descended from the sky, heading straight for the holy altar in the middle of Heaven's Saint Palace. Ji Tianxing sat unmoving at the top of the holy altar, his eyes still closed as he calmly cultivated. He could clearly feel the boundless spiritual energy pouring down from the top of his head. The next moment, the first rainbow divine light descended on the holy altar, drowning his figure. Swoosh! Instantly, boundless rainbow-colored divine light descended one after another, enveloping him and the entire holy altar. He did not feel any discomfort, nor did he feel any pain. All the pores on his body naturally opened as if they were greedily breathing, trying their best to devour the rainbow divine light. That dazzling rainbow divine light was formed by the extremely rich nine heavens spiritual liquid. It contained the purest dermic power, the richest spirit chi of heaven and earth, and some mysterious power. That mysterious power could not only temper his body, but also rapidly strengthen his essence spirit. He guessed that this mysterious power was probably unique to the divine nations. Not long after, the rainbow divine light in the sky dissipated. The vortex with a radius of 10,000 miles also gradually collapsed, and the sky returned to its calm state. The divine light that descended from the nine heavens all gathered at the holy altar, surging like a tidal wave, but it did not dissipate. Ji Tianxing was submerged in the rainbow divine light, and he could only focus on devouring the divine light with all his might, refining it for his own use. Hong Qingtian stood below the holy altar, looking at the surging divine light. He smiled and stroked his beard, his voice filled with gratification. The winds and clouds of the nine heavens change drastically, and once they meet the divine light, they transform into dragons. Tianxing's luck is extremely good. The nine heavens divine light that he attracted this time is actually so vast and mighty. The divine light that I receive every year is not even half of this. Looks like his strength has increased explosively this time. Hong Qingtian's tone was somewhat emotional and envious, but he only felt gratified and expectant, happy for Ji Tianxing. Although he was not related to Ji Tianxing, his relationship with Ji Tianxing was even if it was not that of a master and disciple. He was happy that Ji Tianxing could benefit from it. He was also gratified that Ji Tianxing could create miracles in honor. If he could help Ji Tianxing, he would help. If there was something he could teach Ji Tianxing, he would not hold back and teach him everything he knew. To be honest, he and Ji Tianxing were more like good friends despite their age difference. At the same time, many people on Mount God Bestowment were alarmed by the changes in the sky and the seven-colored divine light. The descent of the rainbow-colored divine light brought with it vast and mighty spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Faint five-colored spiritual chi fell from the sky and enveloped the entire Mount God Bestowment. Whether it was the guards, the maids, or the 50 young geniuses, all of them could clearly feel that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had increased by several times. Many people revealed looks of shock as they looked in the direction of the Heaven Saint Palace. Everyone could clearly see that the resplendent Heaven Saint Palace was shrouded in a seven-colored radiance, looking extremely dazzling. Without a doubt, the divine light descending from the nine heavens had landed in the Heaven Saint Palace. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth that everyone absorbed was only a drop in the ocean of the divine light. The majority of the divine light was within the Heaven Saint Palace. Thinking of this, everyone's hearts were filled with envy and jealousy, especially the young geniuses of various countries. Their emotions were even more complicated. Many thoughts flashed through their minds. The divine light has descended upon the Heaven Saint Palace. That is the place with the densest spiritual chi. Ji Tianxing is staying in the Heaven Saint Palace. He will definitely be able to devour a large amount of divine light and increase his strength greatly. Damn it, he doesn't cultivate as hard as we do, and he has to go through fewer hardships than we do, but he can reap the greatest benefits. It's really infuriating to compare oneself to others. The top geniuses will obtain the most cultivation resources and increase their strength the fastest. The gap between them and us will also quickly widen. I wonder what realm Ji Tianxing's strength will reach after he devours all that divine light. Will he be able to enter the top 3 in the God-Disciple test in 10 days? Many geniuses pondered with complicated emotions for a moment before regaining their composure and continuing their cultivation. The guards and maids gathered in groups of 3 to 5. After discussing for an hour, they dispersed one after another. Within the Heaven Saint Palace, the 7-color divine light enveloping the holy altar lasted for an entire day. Only when night fell did the dazzling 7-color divine light disappear. All the divine light had been devoured. Of course, the energy contained within the divine light was too vast. With Ji Tianxing's strength, it was impossible for him to devour all of it. He had devoured about 50%, the burial of heaven had devoured 30%, and the heaven-mending pearl had devoured 20%. Even so, he could not refine the 50% of divine light he had devoured in a short period of time. He could only store the divine light in his body first, and slowly refine and absorb it in the future to gradually increase his strength. When the divine light dissipated and the holy altar regained its calm, Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed across his eyes, and his body emitted an incomparably powerful and mysterious aura. Without a doubt, his strength had increased tremendously. Hong Qingtian stood below the holy altar for an entire day, guarding him to prevent any accidents from happening to him. Seeing that Ji Tianxing had ended his cultivation, he anxiously flew to the holy altar and landed beside Ji Tianxing. Tianxing, how did you finish devouring all the divine light in a day? Such a vast amount of divine light, and you are in such a hurry to devour it. It will cause harm to your body. As he spoke, Hong Qingtian looked at him with concern, checking his body's condition. Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. Elder Hong, don't worry. I am fine. I will store the divine light in my body for the time being and slowly refine it in the future. Seeing that he was fine, Hong Qingtian was slightly relieved. Suddenly, he realized that Ji Tianxing's strength realm had changed, and he immediately revealed a look of shock. Yeah, you actually broke through to the 7th level essence spirit realm? Didn't you not completely refine the divine light? How did you break through so quickly? Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a smile, Perhaps it's because I am the son of Oracle, so the kingdom of God took special care of me, sending down such a vast amount of divine light. The divine light's effects are extraordinary, allowing me to reap such bountiful rewards. Hong Qingtian thought for a moment and found it reasonable. He said with a smile, You are different from others. You will always create miracles and do all sorts of unbelievable things. All right, I won't take up any more of your time. Cultivation time is precious. Quickly go back and cultivate in seclusion. Refine the divine light as soon as possible. All right, then I'll take my leave first. Ji Tianxing replied with a nod and bowed before leaving the holy altar.